Well, it's funny. I was saying to Ken, I'm like, all of the different meeting platforms, I thought I had it down and then I changed jobs and now it's a whole set of new meeting platforms. I'm like, dang it. How am I going to go?
Yeah, and it's also
This conference will now be recorded.
Great. Well, hopefully we'll get everybody on here in a minute. Let's make sure the chat feature is working. And it looks like it is, and that's how the commissioners communicate using asterisks. They tell me they want to speak. So, and of course it's easy to miss in this little box, so I ask for help. Oh boy, vacation wasn't long enough. Okay, well, welcome everybody. I think we've got almost everybody on now. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened, but it was not us. So, glad to see all your faces and Happy New Year. Still have my lights on just to try and keep it festive for the new year, at least for our first meeting. So we will go ahead. We're 5 minutes late getting started due to the glitches with GoToMeeting and the inability to get online. So we'll go ahead and start. If you see that some of our fellow commissioners are missing, you might want to text them and make sure that they are checking their emails to get that new link so we can get everybody on and get started. So I will say again, good morning and welcome to the new director of CalRecycle. Rachel Wagner has joined us. We're so glad to have her. And to the public, we hope everybody had a nice holiday and welcome back. This is now our 14th meeting of the full commission since we were seated last year. And it is our first meeting of 2021, if anybody can believe that. I'm still writing 2020. We are recording this meeting at the National Stewardship Action Council because we can post it very quickly, whereas CalRecycle is not able to do that due to accessibility standards. So if you go to our YouTube page, this should be uploaded very quickly this afternoon. And we have posted all the other meetings that we've had as well. And commissioners, again, will stick with our putting an asterisk in the chat box. If you wish to speak, I will try to do it in order, and if I fail, I know you're good at catching me and reminding me to make sure we get back to those in order. And again, we are not reading public comments at the meeting that have been submitted in writing and posted on the website, but there haven't been that many since we had our last meeting, and I might just ask that the few that have been submitted be read this time to catch us up, since I know everybody had a nice long holiday. Members of the public who wish to comment during the meeting may do so using the Commission's public comment portal on the CalRecycle website. You can use the portal by selecting the statewide commission from the initial drop-down menu. And we really ask that you use the portal because that means it can be automatically published and made live for everyone to see. And it is much easier for us to track all the comments and is ADA accessible. We did, as you know, put out a Google document to make sure that all the work of the commission is posted quickly and live so everybody can follow it. It is linked from the CalRecycle Commission webpage, and I greatly appreciate all the committee chairs making sure all your documents are posted there prior to your meetings, during your meetings, and immediately after when they're finished so the public can follow us. We have a listserv again, so if everybody wants to follow in the public, CalRecycle has a listserv for the commission, and you'll get automatic updates of our meetings. So I want to say first, welcome back. I hope you all had a lovely holiday. We worked really hard at the end of December, and we were able to get our first draft report out to the legislators and CalRecycle and Cal EPA. And I know everybody's probably tired and really needed their vacation, so I hope it was long enough. I feel like it wasn't for me, but we just keep going and have our coffee ready. But with our housekeeping done, we'll go ahead and we'll start with the call to order and the establishment of a quorum. So I will call out your names. I think we've almost got everybody now. Do we have Commissioner John Bouchard?
Here.
Great. And Commissioner Cadena?
I'm here.
Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. And Commissioner Dow?
Present.
Great. Commissioner Dunleavy?
Yes, here.
Great. Commissioner Ferrante?
Here.
Commissioner Kalpikoff?
Here.
Commissioner Lapis? Oh, are we missing? Could somebody text Nick?
I saw that he was online. He just is not. That was.
Okay. Just make sure we get him to speak up for the record when he's back. And then Commissioner Medrano.
I'm here.
Great. And Commissioner Osagura?
Here with video problems today, so you'll probably just see a lot of my picture so until I resolve it.
Okay, no problem. Commissioner Potashner?
Here.
And myself, Heidi Sanborn. Commissioner Schneider?
Present.
It's actually Mayor. Commissioner Sky?
Present.
Commissioner Toyota? I think you're here.
Here.
Yeah. And Commissioner Vice Chair Valle?
Here.
Great. And Commissioner Ward is here, I believe.
Here, and I do see Mr. Lapis did try to say something, but I didn't hear it. He still seems to be present.
Nasty
Lapis.
mute buttons.
Is he there? Because I don't see him. Maybe he's on the phone and having the same sort of...
His
Problems.
microphone is on, but I'm not hearing anything. So, Commissioner Lapis, you seem to be hearing us, but we're not hearing you.
Maybe he can call in on the phone so that we can hear him when he needs to speak. But with that, we do have establishment of a quorum. So we'll go ahead and move on. Okay, so Nick says he's working on it in the chat box. Okay, so he is here though, so we have the full commission. Thank you all for being here. So we'll move on to agenda item number 2, review and potential approval of the meeting notes. We had 2 meetings in 3 days, December, but I believe we are approving the notes from the we're approving the notes from the 16th and the 18th of December. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read them. Is there somebody willing to entertain a motion on the meeting minutes? Does someone have any comments or edits to them?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Good, first and seconded. All those in favor say aye, hand up.
Aye.
Great, thumbs up, yep. And is there anybody who's opposed or has any edits to those meeting minutes? Very good, then they're unanimously approved for both meetings. Okay, so we will now move on to agenda item number 3, public comment review for items not on the agenda. CalRecycle staff, can you please let us know, have we had any comments come in recently? I think I saw one last night from a mattress company, Purple Innovation. There might be more. Do you want to make sure that we know which comments have come in, maybe in the last 24 hours?
In the last 24 hours, we've gotten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 comments.
Wow. Because it has been a holiday and probably everybody's been buried coming back, I think it would be a good idea if we have them at least read off the beginning of those comments, if that is okay, to make sure everybody is up to speed. And we did just submit a very important report, so I do want to make sure we get it, we hear those comments. So if you could go ahead and read the comments, please.
Sure. From Shirley Freaks, Nevada County Climate Action Now, titled Current Update on AB 341. The last update I see on AB 341 is October 2013, and I cannot find a more recent one. Is there? I know we are far from goal, but how far? And are there fines for not making goals? Is your commission tasked with helping to meet the goal? What is the new date for the goal? We seriously missed 2020. Thank you.
Again, these are public comments on things not on the agenda, so we cannot actually discuss these right now. So we're going to take those under consideration, and we can discuss at the end of the meeting on the items for a future agenda, putting these sorts of, addressing these comments there. So that's why we're not responding at this point. Okay, thank you. Second, the next comment.
From Jill Duffy of Humboldt Waste Management Authority, CRV lack of redemption centers in Humboldt. In consideration of no certified recycling centers, would Secretary Blumenfeld and CalRecycle Director consider establishing a provision or waiver that allows future certified recycling centers to accept customers by appointment for a temporary period of time? This could enable the restoration of CRV buyback to consumers who have been without CRV redemption services since March 2020.
Thank you. Appreciate that comment. Next one.
From Rhonda Andreasen, McKinleyville Grocery Outlet, titled Lack of Recycling Center in Humboldt. It is word for word exactly the same as the previous comment.
Okay, thank you for saying it. Next comment.
From Mike and Catherine Luna, Eureka Grocery Outlet, titled Recycling in Local Grocery Stores. It is extremely similar, but in addition to the comment, they also added, our warehouses are always being filled with food and products to be able to have available for the public. If we start filling out warehouse with recycling products, it causes a safety hazard for our employees with potentially contaminated materials. This will also cause a potential rise in rodent infestation. We don't have the facilities to hold such a product and still be able to keep our employees and public safe. The appointment schedules are only asked of for a temporary basis. And then next.
Thank you.
Next we have Craig R. Kleinman from Purple Innovation LLC, titled Used Mattress Pickup. We applaud the State Recycling Commission's vision and leadership in attempting to further the cause of recycling. Purple Innovation LLC, Purple, is a mattress manufacturer that participates in the MRC Stewardship Program. Thank you for your consideration. Due to COVID-19, we have found it to be very challenging to attempt to comply with the requirement that we remove used mattresses from homes during the pandemic, particularly considering the Cal OSHA regulations that were recently promulgated. We wonder if the Commission has given any thought to how recycling activities during the pandemic may impact businesses and their employees' safety and increase costs. Put succinctly, since the pandemic has not subsided and as a new strain of COVID-19 has evolved and has arrived in California, how safe can one assume that entering a home to retrieve a used mattress will be? And how can we be sure that we will not expose such an individual to the virus? The comment continues, but we've reached the 150-word limit.
Thank you. And I will just say that without getting into any discussion, that under stewardship programs, CalRecycle has the authority to give extensions, et cetera, as they have with the CARE program. So that's something that MRC, if they wish to, could ask of CalRecycle staff. But that I don't believe is under our purview.
From Erica Daly of Pre-Zero US, titled SB 270, Conflict with Proposed Elimination of Number 4 Recyclables. Dear Commission members, the draft recommendations to limit recyclable to the resin identification codes number 1 and number 2, PET and HDPE respectively, conflict with the SB 270 legislation requiring, as of January 2020, 40% recycled content in LDPE, RIC number 4, grocery bags. If this resin is eliminated from recyclable plastic, the industry will lose its source of PCR material and bag manufacturers will not be able to meet this legislation in California. Pre-Zero US has first-hand experience in this space, operating a 100% certified post-consumer LDPE recycling facility in Southern California. The current capacity is 12,000 metric tons annually of LDPE and LLDPE material, number 4. This $90 million facility was opened in 2020 and is looking to expand LDPE recycling opportunities to meet the needs of SB 270 bag manufacturers. The proposed draft would decrease or eliminate that opportunity for several businesses built on the SB 270 legislation, and the comment continues, but we've reached the 150-word limit.
Thank you.
And then last one from Alana LaBelle of North Coast Cooperative, Inc. Recycling centers recertified for appointment only. Looks like this is also word for word exactly the same as the previous comments from Jill Duffy and Rhonda Andreasen.
Okay, so it seems like they're really struggling in Humboldt. So it's good to know that. And those are all very helpful comments. So thank you, everybody, for submitting them. Again, these were not on the agenda, so we're not allowed to discuss them at this point, but we can discuss putting them on future agendas. Thank you very much. So with that, we are at 8:48. We're running early, and we can go ahead and move to agenda item 4, which is a little early. So hopefully we'll go ahead and get started, or we can discuss putting it off. But we do have our new director of CalRecycle, Rachel Maki-Wagner here. And I don't believe Secretary Blumenfeld planned on being here until 9 a.m. So we can either move this off for 12 minutes until he can join us. Do you have any suggestions, Director, how you'd like to proceed? But we're just really glad you're here. And really glad that you have the position and it's filled. We're delighted.
Thank you so much, Heidi. And it's so nice to see so many familiar faces this morning. I'm very excited to be joining CalRecycle. Today is my third official day. So I am getting my feet wet and very excited to participate in the commission meeting and observe the incredible work that you guys are doing. I just really want to say thank you to all of you for the incredible amount of work that you went through to build your report and the recommendations, the very thoughtful recommendations that you all have put forward in your report. It is, having worked for the legislature for many, many, many years, I know the amount of work that goes into creating policy consensus and building those types of recommendations. So really appreciate all of the work that each and every one of you are doing individually and as a group to help further our cause of recycling here in California. And exciting to hear the meeting today.
Great. Well, do we want to wait for Secretary Blumenfeld, or do we want to move on to something else until he arrives? Otherwise, we could also open it at this point to commissioners to ask questions of our director, if that's okay with you. Director Wagner, would you be okay with that?
Totally fine to open it up for questions. I'm sure Jared would want us to, Secretary Blumenfeld would want us to move forward until he got here. So happy to open up for questions, whatever is the preference of the commission.
Well, maybe we should just, if there's any questions from the commissioners that would like to start on things, if you think that it's something you really want to make sure Secretary Blumenfeld, can participate in, then we'll just hold off. But if you have any thoughts or comments or questions now, just go ahead and put your asterisks in the chat box.
And I believe the secretary, I texted the secretary, I believe he's joining as we speak, so he should be here shortly.
Oh, perfect. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you. So glad that you're there, Director Wagner. Good to meet you. And I am director of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority, which is north of Humboldt County. And so the comments that were registered before from Humboldt County also affect us, because the nearest place that Humboldt County residents can get money back from their bottles and cans is Del Norte County, which is a 90-mile drive. It's like driving from Vallejo to Sacramento just to get a nickel back. It's kind of crazy. So all I can do is generally encourage everything you can do to make convenient buyback centers viable. Any flexibility you can do to make it possible people get their money back, because it's just not right for people to have to pay the redemption value and not be able to get it back. That's just not right. So anything you can do to help address that situation as quickly as possible, please do so.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Ward. I just want to let you all know that Secretary Blumenfeld has joined. I'm happy to address that comment, Commissioner. Completely concur. It was one of the first things that I asked to be briefed on when I came on board, was the state of our, or lack of state of our, convenience zones across the state. I'm very familiar with your region. Worked for now Congressman, but then Senator Thompson up in his Eureka field office many, many years ago, and very familiar with the challenges that are created in a somewhat rural area like that when we don't, when we aren't able to meet the statutory requirements. And so we are looking at, I am very encouraged that the department has funded 5 pilot projects that should be up and running in other parts of the state. Would really like to hear from the North Coast in terms of their interest and ability to implement another pilot project. We will hopefully be getting additional funding to test some other pilot projects across the state, and I think the North Coast could be a region that could really benefit from that opportunity in a very short term. And then, I know Senator McGuire has reached out to me and is very interested, as has Assemblymember Wood, is very interested in what can we do for regions, specifically the North Coast, but regions like the North Coast that are impacted. So definitely on the top of the list of things to address this year, and am excited about continuing that conversation.
Great, thank you. And then I want to welcome our Secretary of Cali, PA, Jared Blumenfeld. Welcome, Jared.
Hey, Heidi. Hi, everyone. How are you doing on this? Sacramento, at least, it looks like it's going to rain, which is
A good thing.
is always in my prayers, because dealing with drought management on top of trying to find, buyback centers is too much. So
Well, we're so glad you're here. We're still kind of getting it back in the groove from a nice long holiday and that big report. But we would love to give you a minute to say anything you'd like to say to the commissioners, and then we've opened it up for questions. We were able to start a little bit early, so thanks for joining us early.
Of course. And it's great to be here with all of you, and particularly Rachel. Thank you, Rachel, for coming on board. Really appreciate it. I'll talk a bit about that at the end, but really just want to, it seems like maybe it was really just yesterday that we all met for the first meeting. I remember, because I didn't have go-to meetings at that point, and now it's actually on my computer. So it's been maybe, I don't know how long exactly has it been, Heidi? It feels like 7 months, 6 months. But
6 months, yeah.
6 months, yeah. I mean, it's insane how much has happened, and mainly how much you've done. When we were looking over kind of all the materials, over 1,200 hours that have been spent by all of you working on the recommendations that you submitted. Really, really appreciate the time, the energy, the commitment that each of you have put in. It's no small task to think through these issues in a holistic and collaborative way. So I really appreciate it. Especially, I think the world has been consumed by the pandemic, and that's completely appropriate, but it also showed a lot of vulnerabilities within other systems, economic systems, systems of policy. And when I think about recycling and waste as a material system, it really touches everything that we do. So, you can go to a transfer station or landfill or recycling facility, and you'll know exactly what season it is. And as all the folks on the commission who are involved in this day to day, this is the season of PPE, this is the season of people ordering on Amazon, and how the recycling markets react and as a consequence how they need to be developed, I think is a really important part of what you've all done. So the recommendations, I think, are incredibly thoughtful and insightful. You got, as you know, because you wrote it, 19 specific proposals. I like that you started with incorporating the precautionary principle into standards for food service packaging. Those are two things I spent a lot of time independently on. I didn't ever think they'd be combined into one, so I appreciate that. Really like the stuff around procurement. If we can't buy green at the state and understand what that means, we're not leading by example. Food recovery programs, obviously, when we started the pandemic, we were at 1 in 5 Californians who were hungry. That number's only unfortunately climbed. So really understanding the whole ability to provide food to those who need it the most, and think about that whole chain of food and food waste is really close to, I know, what Rachel and I and the governor want to achieve. I think most people feel like this one's been solved, but it really hasn't. And so thank you for continuing to focus on the fact that what we say is recyclable actually is recyclable or compostable in California. I remember going around and around on these standards when I worked in San Francisco, because it was so frustrating that restaurants could buy things that said they were compostable or biodegradable, and they weren't. And, you shouldn't have to have a PhD in both kind of chemical engineering and infrastructure development in California before you buy something. So approve that. And then this is one that I particularly care about a lot, which is just we were on this mythical tooth fairy journey for a long time, that everything that we exported was somehow beautifully recycled and perfectly remanufactured. And so your call to improve transparency, I think, opens up this discussion about where stuff is going, and consequently the fact that it probably isn't in many cases, or hasn't in many cases, been recycled. I think puts pressure on all of us to work out how to do it better in California. So, I also kind of appreciate the fact that you stuck to your job, but you also went beyond it and looked at other things, environmental quality, public health, environmental justice, and really focused on how those intersections happen, and whether that's, the goals of other parts of the state, our goal of cutting greenhouse gas emissions and really understanding how that intersects with materials management, I think is critical, and also cutting green tape. Like, it should be easier. The question about, once you've paid your CRV, it should be fairly easy to redeem it somewhere. We all want redemption. And who knows, we may even get it in Virginia today. Okay, let's see. So yeah, also, you are all stakeholders, but you also did a great job of kind of reaching out. I got good comments from people who aren't on the commission thanking everyone for the efforts to be particularly focused on hearing the process and making sure that there was good feedback. So really want to appreciate all of you and the CalRecycle team to make sure that those public comments were heard and documented, and really think that, the more that we can engage, and I think that's the spirit of this commission effort, the more we can engage every diverse community in the state to understand the benefits and the challenges, then I think we're really going to get to a place that this issue moves up the agenda, which is ultimately, I think, our political goal. Like, this is something that's always in the background. It needs to be in the foreground, because there's a lot of fixes that you've identified that we need to tackle. We can only do that if people recognize those issues. So thank you again. Really appreciate everyone's efforts and dedication. Really, really think that first draft is really important beginning to the new year. Talking of the new year, and as I started, I've known Rachel, as many of you have, for a long time. She's incredibly smart, dedicated, focused, strategic, committed to collaboration and really bringing equity to the department. And I'm just thrilled that, she and the governor and I think, share a vision of wanting to move forward this agenda in a bold and decisive fashion. And I really can't think of anyone better than Rachel to be at the helm of CalRecycle. It does everything from, the things that you're talking about, but it also last year spent $2.3 billion on debris removal after Paradise and Woolsey fires, and it's continuing the work based on this year's wildfire season. It does school education. the depth and breadth of what CalRecycle does goes beyond what any of us would imagine. So I'm thrilled to have a partner in crime in Rachel. And mainly now you can phone her rather than me day and night about all your recycling issues. Over to you, Rachel.
Well, first, I just think I should start every day with every meeting with an introduction by Jared, by the secretary, because that was the best start of a day ever to have that level of compliment. I couldn't be more excited, as I said to all of you, to be at CalRecycle and have had the incredible honor to work with Secretary Blumenfeld in my capacity in the governor's office. And I think we had too much fun in that capacity, so we needed to change it up a little bit and create a whole new set of goals and strategies around some of the things that we want to accomplish. And couldn't be more excited. CalRecycle is a dream come true for me, and the secretary and the governor both have such an enthusiasm for truly achieving a circular economy, moving forward on so many important issues, and thinking really creatively about how to get those solutions. That is the ideal situation for me. I feel a little bit like a kid in a candy store today. So it is absolutely with mutual respect and admiration that I come to CalRecycle to work for the secretary and with the secretary on this important agenda, and I'm excited to work with all of you.
Thank you. And as chair, I'll take a privilege and start with a question, then turn it over to some of the other commissioners that have questions as well. But, one of the things that we've talked about, is what would happen with the recommendations that we put out. So there was 19, and it was obvious you've read it, so thank you very much. And I guess if you want to share with the commissioners, like, where do you think this is going to land? I mean, we just give advice and just hope people pick it up and run with it. Is there anything you can give us on insight? Is the governor going to, are you going to be able to run with some of these as an agency? Because I know typically CalRecycle hasn't been running their own bills. They've just kind of waited for somebody in the legislature to do it. So any feedback or thoughts on that you could share?
I mean, I would just say, first and foremost, it's kind of reiterating what I said, which is this is about raising the bar and the agenda and the visibility of these issues. So that seems first and foremost, because we've had, as Nick and you and others can attest, we've had a lot of bills that don't go anywhere because people are either confused about the issue. There's so much, everyone on this issue thinks it's simple. And then the minute it gets complicated, they kind of get nervous. And so the more, I think what you've done is be able to kind of crystallize that these are the set of key issues. Some of them, can be run independent of a comprehensive change to the way we think about materials management in the state. Transparency, for instance, just to name one. So helping people understand kind of what the lay of the land is, and all of you have Twitter feeds and Instagram and the ability to write op-eds. I mean, the more that we get this issue out there, and I think, you were really wise to look at those intersection points with climate, environmental justice, how we understand how the whole picture works together. And then I don't know, in terms of the department, the benefit of the department doing it versus someone else, but the more we're able to say, yeah, this makes sense, the commission came out with it, we're in total agreement, I think it's finding consensus, and then the legislature can decide what their priorities are, and we'll continue, Rachel and her team will continue, as all of us will, to work with them. But knowing there's a constituency out there that's sophisticated like all of you are, and that the commission came up with these 19 recommendations, I think is super helpful.
Okay, so we can move on because some of the commissioners have questions, hands raised. Commissioner Schneider is also the mayor of Millbrae.
Hi, Happy New Year, welcome, and congratulations to our new director. I was trying to figure out how to say this succinctly. I come from the recycling field, but I'm now the mayor of a small city. I did spend the last year serving on COVID recovery, well, almost the last year, COVID recovery teams. And it's great that San Mateo County has been chosen as one of the 5 pilot projects. And yay, whippy, but not enough. So within my own city, I'm hoping that we will do some kind of action with one of our 3 locations that should have a redemption center. And guidance from CalRecycle would be very helpful. Right now, my city hasn't had to do any layoffs, but most of the cities are probably getting closer and closer to looking at that. It is my #1 commitment that we not lay off staff, because we're so small to begin with. But the reality is the COVID recession is going to hit us hard. So the help of getting the redemption centers and recognizing that it's part of our lowest income people rely on that. They rely on these centers. And in San Mateo County, population 750,000 plus, we currently have 3 locations. And whereas Commissioner Ward talked about the 90 miles for Arcata County, I feel you, some of our people have to go through an hour and a half of traffic, or maybe now 45 minutes worth of traffic in the current time. So anything you can do to help there, recognizing that it is part of the COVID recovery, would help. I know I pushed for emergency regulations until Commissioner Lapa said, no, that takes 2/3 of the legislature. But I am hopeful that CalRecycle will push some things through without legislation. The other side, Mr. Blumenthal, you mentioned it, transparency. My city still thinks we're at over 70% recycling, and yet the state rate is 37%. I think we have a huge amount of education to do. I love garbage, but most electeds don't have time to dive into it, but they need to. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Mayor, and everything you're doing in the town of Millbrae. You know, how we move the agenda forward, I think has to bring everyone along with us. And certainly every time that I've gone out and looked at the issue of who's going to CRV, it's often, or for redemptions, it's often the people that are really just scraping by. And so the idea that, you know, that they can go anywhere, you know, an hour and a half, 45 minutes, or, you know, most people are on bicycle or foot that I've spent time with, and they're supplying revenue to their whole family. And so these centers are really, really critical, especially as we get in potential of more economic dire straits. So I do think there's something that Rachel and I already sat down and talked about. It's really top of mind. How we get people to a place where they can get the funding back that they put into it is going to help people. I often say, you know, the same people that were worried about, you know, becoming homeless, this often is the difference. And I know Rich Fire spent a lot of time on this and really helping that community. But like, this is, in the bizarre country and time that we live in, CRV is a safety net for a lot of people. And if we take that away, we're consigning people to very, very difficult times. So
Thank you. It really is an urgent emergency for a lot of people. They really do need it just for food and basics. Okay, I think our next commissioner to raise their hand is Commissioner Jeff Donlavey.
But wait, just before we get to Jeff, so I mean, the only thing, Anne, would be like an op-ed in a local paper written by folks who are surviving day to day to show the human face. Often we put that to the side, and so thinking about making this human again would be great.
Can I share, Sanborn? I was a little confused. As commissioners, we're not supposed to advocate for the things that we've just recommended. But if you think that we can write editorials, I'll start drafting and I'll reach out into the community and see who I can bring along. I think that's a great idea.
I think it's a
I mean,
very
certainly-
interesting point. Yeah.
I don't know, Heidi, if this is all your call, but I mean, certainly, and you're the mayor of a town, you got a platform, even if it wasn't connected directly to the commission, like the ability to tell these stories, I think exists independent of, I don't know what those rules are. I want to make sure we adhere to them, but yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
It really does raise a very important question that I think we're all thinking, because all of us could write, we could all get out there and be very public about what these recommendations are. I mean, we came up with 19 recommendations with 17 people agreeing. We weren't all sure we could do that at the beginning. So it's important we get the word out, but there is a question as to where the lines are. And I think maybe we need the CalRecycle staff to, now that we've got these first recommendations out, give us real clarity on where those lines are again and refresh our memory now that we've done this, because I think we all obviously support them and would like to help be supportive getting the word out, but we don't want to cross any lines because clearly we want to have high integrity with the commission. So maybe we can talk about that in a little bit. Commissioner Dunleavy? You were next.
Thank you. Jared, Happy New Year. Rachel, Happy New Year. Congratulations on the new position. As everybody's mentioned, we're very excited to have somebody on board in the absence over the past year of the director. But as you've heard, bottle bill is something that affects 40 million Californians. In some areas, there's quite a few recycling centers and the program works well. They have convenience and the numbers are showing that people return containers when they have the ability to go to a redemption center. But unfortunately, there's areas that it is not working. There's underserved areas, primarily in Northern California or the higher cost coastal communities in Southern California. This session, the bottle bill needs to be fixed. It's generating over $100 million a year in general sales tax revenue. Some of that money should be used to help pay for recycling centers in those higher cost areas. But speed is going to be the key. Hopefully there'll be an opportunity within the governor's budget to accelerate payments or incentives for recycling centers to open up in these underserved areas, because through the legislative process, any changes will take 24 to 36 months before anything happens. So hopefully, Jared and Rachel, you guys can have some discussions with the governor to find ways to expedite the incentives to open up recycling centers in underserved areas. One of the key things that I think will be important in changes is getting the director the authority to make changes and getting CalRecycle access to money where they can help recycling centers open up in all these underserved areas. Not to rain on your comments regarding the pilot programs, but I think the pilot programs have been an embarrassment. There's only one that's operating right now. I think it's a disservice to the community that it is operating in, because the one location that is operating has taken away over 30 redemption opportunities because all the stores have been exempt. There's another pilot program that's been approved that will take away over 360 redemption opportunities for that community, with only 4 locations that might serve them. And I doubt that pilot program will start because of a funding deficit where they need approximately $3.5 to $4 million to start. And I don't think they have that money. There's another program that will take away 60 redemption opportunities, and they would operate with 4. So only one is operating. The San Mateo project might start in April or May. So that project will get $1 million to operate for 14 months. I think that $1 million could be used better to open up more recycling centers long term. I'm not a proponent that pilot programs should be extended or expanded. we need to fix the bottle bill and use any money available to open up new redemption centers in these underserved areas, whether it's Humboldt County, Mendocino, the town of Ukiah lost 2 recycling centers, and those 2 recycling centers were paying out $1.5 million a year in CRV into that local community. And now those residents, just like Commissioner Ward had mentioned, they have to drive 30 miles north or 40 miles south to get their redemption money back. The recycling community has been talking. We do have solutions. We look forward to working with you, and hopefully this session there can be some substantial changes to the bottle bill, but we need the governor's support, hopefully through the budget process, to provide funding to open up redemption centers in these underserved areas and getting you more involved in having access to funds to help these redemption centers. So we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. What I took away from that is Rachel needs more power and money. I like both those things.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I've always been a proponent that CalRecycle staff has been very knowledgeable. I think they know where the problems are, and I think they have ideas on solutions, but unfortunately they've been limited to calling balls and strikes and not being able to call the plays. I think giving CalRecycle staff and the director more authority and more funds available will only help residents and get them more convenience to redeem their cans and bottles.
Yeah, and as an example of that, Jeff, which is really playing out in real time, I mean, the authority that Rachel and CalRecycle have with OES to do cleanups, and the $2.3 billion they spent just last year, when we make it a priority and focus money and time on it, it gets done pretty damn quickly.
Great. Thank you. And our next commissioner is Commissioner Sky from LA County.
Thank you so much. Good morning and Happy New Year. I'm with LA County Public Works, and I'm sure the commissioners agree that we're very grateful to have the Secretary of Cal EPA and the Director of CalRecycle joining us and engaging in this very meaningful way. So I want to thank you first. And also it's wonderful not just to have a director appointed and filling the vacancy at CalRecycle, but particularly Director Wagner, to have you with your experience being selected. We're delighted to see you there. As you noted earlier, and I think is reflected in our report, we have some very serious challenges that we're facing and that really need bold action in Sacramento to address them. And we talked a lot about the bottle bill, but I expect the commission will be focused very much on the two 75% goals for recycling and for organic waste diversion, where right now I think those goals were not intended to be aspirational, but right now we're very far away from being able to achieve those goals. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about your role going forward, engaging with the legislature on behalf of the governor's office. Given your extensive experience and relationships with the legislature, I'm hoping that CalRecycle can have a more active role, given that we have some very good recommendations that we just submitted. We hope to see them moving forward. And I was hoping you can also speak a little bit more about your priorities as director.
Well, thank you so much. And I appreciate the vote of confidence based on my experience with the legislature. And I really do hope that the experience lends itself to a very strong working relationship with them as we try to make some, I think, pretty major changes to the way we operate so that we can achieve those goals. I think the top priority for 2021 is to get us on that path, and a very solidified path to meeting the 75% recycling goal and the 75% organics goal. As I'm sure you are aware, we're getting a lot of questions from local governments right now about, given the situation with COVID and otherwise, what the state is going to do to relieve them from that obligation to meet the the organics mandate or organics goal that was solidified and codified in statute. And my priority and what I've said so far in those conversations isn't what are we going to do to extend or move those dates, but rather what is necessary and what can we do together as the state, local governments, and the stakeholders who have a very important role in implementation to achieve compliance, not move it out and talk for 2 more years about what that's going to take. It's very concerning to me that we aren't meeting our recycling goals, and I don't think we need to go through the litany of reasons that we're not there. We all know the impacts of National Sword. We all know the impacts of changes in other policies and the unfortunate and highly detrimental impacts of the pandemic on both recycling and to our waste stream overall. My priority is to get us back on track. The governor has asked the secretary and myself to focus on building a circular economy. And that is reliant on us meeting these goals and getting beyond these goals. But we can only actually, the goals are wonderful and I love that we put them in statute. But the roadmap to getting to those goals is what is really my priority for building this year. And I think we have really good partners in the legislature who are interested in getting there. I think, you know, to Commissioner Dunleavy's concerns and others, I think the challenge is everybody has a different idea of what that roadmap should look like and what the tools should be to achieving it. But I think we have, I always say the first challenge is making sure that we're all trying to go in the same direction. The second challenge is figuring out how to get there. So we have the directionality from the legislature, the desire to want to make change. So now we just need to work together to figure out what that path is. And as Commissioner Sanborn knows, I am nothing if not tenacious on a subject, and we'll keep at it for a decade if necessary to get it done.
Very grateful.
Well, we definitely look forward to working with you. I think we do all agree that those goals are where we all want to be, and so we look forward to finding the solutions that move us in that direction.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Valle.
Thank you. Commissioner, each of our commissioners, many of us had met with Secretary Blumenfeld about 18 months ago, including members of CAW. When we talked about constituting this commission, I want to thank the leadership of Susan Eggman and her office for bringing us together. And Secretary Blumenfeld, you committed that you heard the message about the humanity of recycling. And clearly in your remarks, you indicate that you understand that. And that's something that resonates with a lot of people that we see at our center, which is in excess of 300 customers, nearly 400 customers per day. Their humanity cannot be forgotten. A lot of the people not only are homeless, but a lot of people are simply living on the edge day to day. And we constantly hear about how they're trying to protect themselves. Our recycling centers are providing PPE to a lot of our customers because you can see that they've been wearing them for weeks and weeks and weeks and they're not effective. So that's a cost that we've had to bear ourselves that was not anticipated in our budgets. And hand cleaners and so forth, having to service those, constantly cleaning surfaces because people fear that anything they touch will give them COVID. So that's something I hope that will be incorporated into some discretion and some power, as you said, to our new leader at Cal Recycle. Let's free up some money to do incidental things as well as the important things around COVID, but also going forward, as so well articulated by Commissioner Dunleavy, long-term effects of opening up recycling centers, enabling them to cover their cost and making sure that we open up more redemption centers for the underserved areas. It sounds like we're all moving in the same direction. Accountability is critical. So those of us who have met with you in the past, Secretary Blumenfeld, have felt a sense of that you do provide that leadership, and we can be your critical allies, but we are nonetheless your allies. We've all come together willingly as volunteers. We don't ask for compensation, but on occasion it would be nice if CalRecycle could offer some help. We had an incident recently about requesting emails and text messages about our conversations amongst ourselves and others by an industry that's been very critical of recycling. And we were told by CalRecycle that there were no legal resources available to us to advise us about how to bring that information forward, or how we could receive any kind of legal advice about how we as commissioners were vulnerable or exposed legally to a request for information about ourselves and our communications. So those are small things that I think that CalRecycle and Director Wagner can tackle, but more importantly, giving Director Wagner more discretion and power, as you articulated, but also the decision-making capability to make decisions and free up money, at least to a point where it enables us to do a better job as commissioners. But I want to be real clear on the public record. No way am I asking for any kind of compensation. This is a commitment that we've made to our state and to the people that we serve. So thank you so much.
Respond to that at all, Jared? I couldn't hear you.
Thank you, Rich. I really appreciate your words and most importantly your deeds every day. Really inspiring what you're able to do, and many of you know what Rich does, but if you haven't gone out and seen it, it's really amazing. I would say, yeah, we really need to focus. I think needs to be the number one thing that we do, because we as a movement, I think, are too diluted, too disparate, that everyone has the thing that they want to achieve. And while it's great to have 19 recommendations, you know, some people I think will take that and say, you know, we're going to do this one, and you know, 5 other people will do another one, and we're not going to get the critical mass. So thinking about, as I think I said at one of our last meetings together, like how we frame this as, what are the priorities, what are the political coalitions that we can bring together to make this happen and build momentum so that we're actually getting things done. Sometimes we legislatively have kind of all or nothing proposals. Other times it feels like way too incremental, and we're not actually getting enough done to worth, you know, the political fight. As someone I used to work with said, you know, the juice ain't worth the squeeze. So how we kind of get the right balance of meaningful change that lead us, you know, to his point, towards those 75% targets, really help lift up the people who are doing this day in, day out for a livelihood, and all the businesses that you represent in between is our challenge. And it feels like a challenge that keeps coming perennially. The thing that I think Rachel, are looking to all of you and respond by Rich's comments to think about is, like, how do we do it differently? Because we banged our head against this particular wall collectively year after year after year, and we haven't got where we need to go. The good news, Rich, although this is a little the other side of the coin, is if industry is concerned about PRAing you, getting your information, that means that they're thinking you're doing a great job and worried about your influence. So that's a good thing. So congrats. I'm sorry that you're not getting the support. Rachel and I can talk about that afterwards to make sure that you're getting at least the advice to understand what you should or shouldn't be doing. But yeah, I think the more strategic we can be based on the recommendations, based on where we are, the better off we'll be going forward. Because if everyone picks one of those 19 and we all run with it, we'll very, very likely get nothing. And we've gotten nothing for quite some time. So my goal is to get something meaningful, think about how we can do that together, move the ball forward, and obviously the more of the model of that I look to is CARB. You know, CARB, we're about to enter in 2021 the scoping plan for 2045. To Rachel's point, you know, there's a whole process that looks at what measures economy-wide need to be achieved in order to get that goal. People didn't do that with recycling. There's no year-long scoping plan of articulating that. And then there's all kinds of authorities that CARB has to promulgate rules and regulations for mobile sources. The districts have the stationary sources, incredible ability to write rules and work on measures to achieve those reductions. That doesn't exist in recycling. And then finally, you know, the authorities within CARB to actually move an agenda forward, like saying we're going to have 100% zero emission vehicles by 2035, independent of the legislature, really allows us to get that stuff done. It's not like a mystery how you get it done. So in each of those areas, we don't have that authority or that history or that process in recycling. We need, I'm not saying the CARB process is the one necessarily that we should mirror, but it's the one I'm familiar with since it's a sister board and department and office to CalRecycle. So thinking about like structurally something is not working because we can't go to the legislature every single time we want to change a definition of convenience. I mean, it just, the whole thing is not making sense to me. So, you know, based on Jeff and other comments, I do think we need to think, we got these ideas now, what's the strategic vision for how to, the mechanics, I think the underlying mechanics of the vehicle, we're spending a lot of time working out whether we want to drive to, you know, Palm Desert or Vegas, but we, you know, once you lift up the hood, you realize you might not leave Sacramento. So, and I think Rachel's the person to help us get this done. So I'm excited. I unfortunately have to leave. I have a 9:30. So I'm gonna have to.
Before you go, could I just ask one question? The chair and vice chair, it seems like, you know, we could meet, we're allowed to meet, the commission has given us authority to meet with legislators and others and report back. If there's, I just think that maybe if you would wish for us to talk more frequently, more than the commission's meeting or in between, if you can't make these meetings and you want to discuss certain things, feel free to reach out to us, because the vice chair and I could meet and then bring back to the commission anything. And I'm seeing heads nodding. I just think that the commission is very eager to engage and help in any way we can. And it may be outside of your ability to make a specific time on a specific agenda with a 10-day notice and whatever. So just want to put that out there, and really, really appreciate your willingness to be here and to give us the support to do this work. So thank you again for being here. And Rachel, if you can stay, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, and mainly I'd say, I mean, I think the more we coordinate, and obviously Rachel's got a very distinguished and steeped history in this, the more like we're coordinated on like what we're saying, how we're saying it, who we're saying it to in the legislature through Rachel, I think the better off we'll be. So I think you now have a partner in Rachel that can help think through, well, you know, how are we thinking about approaching the legislature, and what stages is she at of discussions, because she's already doing that. So the more calibrated and coordinated we can all be, the more successful we'll be. So I would just say in closing, you know, we're super, super lucky to have Rachel, and let's use her for that kind of strategic visioning of where we go, how we go, because she's the person that I turn to ask those questions. And with that, I hope everyone has a fabulous 2021, and really want to reiterate my thanks to each and every one of you for taking the time and the thoughtfulness of putting those recommendations together, and look forward to working with everyone.
And Secretary, we really appreciate it. And Director Wagner, can you stay, or do you want to, do you have to go as well?
No, I can stay for a little bit longer. I don't have a meeting right at 9:30, so we're good.
Well, it's up to the commissioners. We are at time, but it seems like a really good time to have the director here. If you're open to staying for on this item, I see heads nodding. So why don't we go? The next commissioner that had a thought or comment here was Commissioner Dell.
Yes, and I'm entirely disappointed that I didn't have a chance to speak with the Secretary about this, because I was going to remind him that the last time we spoke, I asked him to support ending plastic waste exports from California to poor countries. And since that time, not only has California not declined those exports, we've increased. California by far is the largest exporter of plastic waste to poor countries at 8.6 million kilograms per month. But what has changed, and Director Wagner, I will make this plea to you, and I do hope you will also talk to the Secretary about this. What has changed is that the Basel Plastic Waste Amendments, an international treaty of 187 countries, came into effect on January 1st. Now, California has been, up until through December, the largest exporter by far of plastic waste. We don't know what's being loaded on ships right now today, but if plastic waste is loaded onto ships at a contamination level above 0.5 to 1.0%, it becomes illegal trafficking once it goes past the international waters. So while it's not illegal to put it on a ship in California because the U.S. did not agree to the Basel Amendments or the Basel Convention, once it hits the high waters and ends up in Malaysia or Indonesia and Thailand, it would be illegal waste. So my question to both the Secretary for the state of California, as well as to you, the Director for CalRecycle as an agency, I have two questions. Two requests. One, will you support and respect the laws of other countries which restrict our imports? It may not be illegal for us to export it and put it on a ship, but it is illegal once it gets there. That's the first request. Second, will you give great consideration to the fact that the 50% diversion and 75% diversion law and goal that are being pushed on communities and municipalities may actually be creating negative behaviors in promoting the export of contaminated waste to other countries, to poor countries who don't have the wherewithal to say, no, inspect every bale and look at all of it. And look at the fact and revisit these diversion goals and say, is there actually an ethical, moral, and legal way to achieve those, or should we revisit them and take the pressure off of communities to meet them in an unethical way? Thank you.
Well, and I don't have any staff here to kick me, so I'm probably going to go beyond where I should go. I do know I don't have the authority as director in my 3 days as director to take a position of support of any my ledge director just popped on. Hi, Mindy. A position of support on any statutory or policy of an international or national nature on behalf of the state of California. I work for a guy in a very large office on the first floor of the Capitol that has the sole authority to do that on behalf of the state. But what I will say, Commissioner Dell, is, and this is the part where I'm probably going to go too far beyond, and Zoe and Mindy are going to kick me over text, but I will say is that the governor and the secretary very much share your frustration about the increase in plastic usage that has resulted in an increase of plastic waste that has resulted in an increase in exportation. we're all on the same page. It's one of the things the governor and the secretary and I talked about as a priority is with this evolution in materials that has resulted in a greater usage of plastics that are hard to recycle, plastics that are hard to deal with. How do we build a better system that makes that not the case? And so that frustration that you are sharing is very much shared by the Newsom administration, the secretary, and myself. And on the diversion rate, I'm going to step out of the Newsom administration for a second and just be somebody who's worked in this policy for a long time. Share that frustration personally very much. And it is the way that the statute was built to encourage and move towards a recycling system. And it was important foundationally to put that in place. But I think what you are highlighting is so incredibly important, which is this is, it is no longer achieving or is not achieving what we optimally need to achieve, which is recycling here in the state of California, a recycling system that resides here in California, which not only means in my mind the recyclers, but the manufacturers who are going to take those materials and give them their second and third life. So I think we are very much on the same page. I'm looking to Mindy and Zoe to tell me if I went out of line.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you, Commissioner Dell, for the comment. And we did have in our recommendations the action on the Basel Convention. And I did tell the commissioners I'd report back if I heard from legislators on our recommendations. And we have heard that one of the members is definitely interested in preparing a resolution on that. So, and there was one done by Senator Wachowski actually in 2019, but that was just the Senate side. This is planned to be, I believe, a joint resolution. So that can come up under the legislative discussion as well. Commissioner Osterger,
I'm sorry, just one additional comment. And I think the other frustration that we very much share with you is in diversion and otherwise is that this is the directive that we've been given. And so I know you all know this, but just highlighting the fact that so much of what CalRecycle does and how we achieve what we do is directed specifically by statute. We are one of those departments, and we have many programs that have very specific statutory boundaries on them. And so and I know you cover this in your recommendations, but just to highlight again that to really make true change, that statutory changes are going to be needed, and that partnership in the legislature is going to be important to get that done.
Yeah, before I turn it over to Commissioner Osterger, I forgot to mention before the secretary left that he talked about prioritization and not just having this scattered approach, which clearly hasn't worked in the past. And we did in the report try to do that by highlighting put out the fires first and addressing the problem with the battery fires and the gas cylinders that are starting fires, because that is increasing costs. It's dangerous. And hopefully everybody can agree on those things. But trying to prioritize the other 17 was much harder. So we didn't get into that, but we did try to talk about prevention first. Okay, and then Commissioner Osterger.
All right, thank you and good morning. First of all, I wanted to thank Secretary Blumenfeld for his comments and also to welcome Director Wagner. Looking forward to working with you. I want to highlight a couple of very important comments I think that the Secretary made and that I want to echo, and I think it's extremely important. It's in our report. First of all, it's the need for viable markets and market demand for the materials that are recyclable. I think that is so extremely important to have a robust recycling market in California and to be able to then recycle those materials that we need. He also mentions the need to reduce green tape. I love that phrase. I think there's a tremendous amount of green tape, especially as it tends to do with building facilities, enhancing facilities, expanding facilities. And we've talked about facilities that should have taken 3 years or 4 years to construct, and we sit on 11 years, 15 years, and sometimes, unfortunately, 20 years to build a facility. So I think that's extremely important. And then the mention on broad coalitions to move policy forward, meaningful policy, but that works for a broad coalition so we get things done. I thought that was so important. I think, Heidi, you've done a wonderful job in guiding all of us, right? A lot of commissioners, and for me, market demand, recyclability, once again, truly recyclable products. I think Commissioner Dell hammers this down all the time, right? I think compostability, materials that truly break down within reasonable time periods in the field is extremely important so we don't have contaminants. And with SB 1383 coming online, we don't end up with a tremendous amount of volume, like in recyclables, that can't go anywhere because it has contaminants. And then, once again, the importance of reduction of green tape, which I think we're all working for. Once again, I want to highlight a project that takes 3 to 4 years should not take 11 or 20 years. And it's not about circumventing regulation or statutes or making sure that we protect folks. It's truly about that if something should take 4 years, it shouldn't sit there and take 8. So that we meet the expectations of what we need to be done. So that's my comments. So once again, welcome, Director Wagner. Looking forward to working with you. And I wish I would have had the same words to tell to Secretary Blumenfeld, but next time I'll thank you. Thank you, Heidi.
And I'm sure Director Wagner is having regular conversations with the Secretary and will pass along the comments from Commissioners Dell and Osigura. So with that, we have no, oh, go ahead.
I was just saying happy to do that.
Okay, well, I think I don't see any other commissioner comments. I know we've got a few other public comments that are not related to items on the agenda. At this point, we're about 9:45. Unless there's anything else, I guess I would just say once again how grateful we are to have you, Director Wagner. I've worked with you for many years. I think so highly of you. I'm so glad you're there. I think you'll do a fabulous job. And for me personally, I'm just delighted. The commissioners I know are all delighted you're there. So we thank you. We look forward to working with you. We're on your side. We're on your team. And we just want to get big things done and have California lead the nation again to waste reduction and recycling and just really setting the pace for the country. So thank you for your time, and just know that we're here to help, and we'll continue to explore what we can do on the public education information side that the Secretary mentioned, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I did want to say one last thing is that I'm always taken by how much of our time is consumed with 4% of the waste stream in the bottle bill. It does take away from other discussions, and I really hope that we can get to the place where we really fix it, get it kind of moved through, and then can really focus on other things. So that I know we're all in that same boat. So thanks again. Good luck. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it and appreciate all of your hard work and these incredibly thoughtful comments. Look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you again, Director. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is item number, well, actually, before we move on to item number 5, I was notified we have 2 public comments that are not related to things on the agenda, but because we just came off a holiday break and we put out that report, I think we should hear them. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to Audrey at CalRecycle to read those into the record.
Great. First, we have Kia Villarreal from North Coast Co-op, titled CRV Underserved in Rural Community. I'm reaching out to the entire commission as this is a pressing matter for my rural community. Many independently owned grocers have been working together to find relief for the business owners burdened with a daily fee that doesn't help recycling in our area and all our shoppers with nowhere to redeem CRV. And then this is word for word what has also been submitted before in consideration of no certified recycling centers. Would Secretary Blumenfeld and CalRecycle Director consider establishing a provision or waiver that allows future certified recycling centers to accept customers by appointment for a temporary period of time? This could enable the restoration of CRV buyback to consumers who have been without CRV redemption services since March 2020. And then next we have Richard Murphy of Murphy's Markets, titled CRV Redemption Humboldt County. To CalRecycle Statewide Commission on Recycling and Marketing, residents of Humboldt County no longer have a certified recycling center and as a result, no viable location to return their beverage containers for CRV. The unwillingness of CalRecycle to approve temporary appointment allowances to struggling CRV redemption sites and centers that resulted in their decertification has effectively created a tax to the residents of Humboldt County. Consumers are charged with CRV deposit fees that they cannot reasonably redeem, and now small businesses will be taxed at a rate of $100 per day for failure to create a redemption center. This very unfortunate development resulted in notification by CalRecycle that we no longer have a certified recycling center within our convenience zones, and as retailers, we now have the burden of developing the necessary infrastructure to accept and redeem CRV recyclables, transporting those containers to a certified recycling location. In Humboldt County, our closest option is 80 miles away, and we have reached the 150 word limit.
Yeah, so those are more comments on the CRV problem. So this is clearly urgent, and we hear you, Humboldt, and thank you all for sending in your comments today.
Actually, I just refreshed, and there was another one that just came in. Would you like to hear it?
Is it regarding the CRV in Humboldt?
Yes. Well,
yeah, I think
it's titled Section 3 Re-CRV by Emiliano Lee.
Start, and let's see if it's the same basic comment. We'll stop it.
As a consumer and retail worker, I'm reaching out to the entire commission regarding the state of CRV in Humboldt County and the rippling effects of not having a certified redemption site in the area. As a consumer, I have no way, without spending an entire day driving 3 to 4 hours each way, of redeeming my CRV bottles and cans. As retailer, we are put in a compromising position of choosing between accepting potentially contaminated materials without the infrastructure to do much with them beyond that, compounded by...
Thanks, Audrey. I think we'll call it there, and we'll just make sure all the commissioners know that they're there and they're posted. We clearly have a problem in Humboldt, and we clearly have heard that. It's been discussed now with the secretary and also with the new director. And I think this could be a discussion with the recycling committee as well, but it's getting urgent. It sounds like people just are very, very frustrated, and we haven't met the promise of the bottle bill program. People just can't return their stuff conveniently. So thank you. We've heard it, and we'll move on. So we'll go ahead. Our next agenda item is number 5, which is an update on legislation, because we're back in a new beginning of a 2-year session. So we invited Mindy McIntyre with CalRecycle, the Ledge Director, to give us an update and kind of outline what we're seeing already early in the session. So, and of course, they decided not to come back until next Monday, but there are bills that have been introduced. So welcome, Mindy, and Happy New Year.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Always funny format. Great. Yeah, well, as you mentioned, this is kind of a funny year coming off of a very, very odd year. And so we'll just have to watch and see how it goes with the legislature kind of changing their calendar and responding, as we all are, to this very odd time. But they are coming back on Monday, or that's the plan at the moment. That's what we've heard, that they're coming back on Monday. We have the first wave of bill introductions, but I'm sure there will be more, many more. I don't actually have that many bills to report to you today, but I do know that, and I can give you a little preview of the bills that I heard will be introduced, if that's of interest to the commission as well. But to start off with the ones that have been introduced, you know, they kind of go to what the discussion has been to today, and that has bottle bill and packaging, plastics in particular. And so we are seeing Senator Wieckowski reintroduce his bill to transition the bottle bill program from state-run program to an EPR program, which still has state oversight. It would add wine and spirits to the bill, or sorry, to the program, and transition, again, the program to an EPR program. It would have a lot of the same components that we are seeing now, and with that comes, of course, the same challenges we are seeing now, but it would be up to the stewardship organization to figure those out. Can go into the detail if there's interest, but it's very much like the bills that he has introduced previously. Then there's SB 54, which is Senator Allen reintroducing a concept. It's not the same bill that was introduced last time, but a scaled down version with the interest in focusing on plastics packaging. And that's SB 54 as well. Same number, so easy for all of us. On that issue area, we've heard lots of interest about doing something on packaging and in particular plastics packaging, and certainly there's a lot that could be done. So I'm sure we'll see a couple more bills in that arena. Who knows who will be the author, sponsor, etc. You guys may individually have more information on that than I do. To the Commission's recommendations, we do know that there's interest in reintroducing 1509 or a version of that would address battery embedded products and loose batteries. And that would, the indication is that all batteries would be included at this point, but again, it's early on in the conversation, and that would require an EPR program for those materials and hopefully complement the e-waste program that we have now. The other bills that we have heard might be introduced, I'm trying to think right now. There's a lot of interest again in packaging, and we've heard a lot of various things about bringing back like that at-store recycling program and dealing with mailing packages. Are there any questions right now about specific bills? On bottle bill, other than what we have seen from Senator Wieckowski, I've heard a lot of questions, but no specific measures to be introduced. Does anybody have questions about other bills that may or may not be introduced?
Commissioner, I see Commissioner Don Levy. Did you want to speak to this?
Yes, thank you. Mindy, Happy New Year. With SB 38, you mentioned wine and spirits. Included or excluded from SB 38?
I was just looking at the bill text, and admittedly, I was just, so in his definition of beverages, B is wine and distilled spirits. So they are included.
Okay, I thought they were dropped, but I'll definitely take another look at it. And then under SB 38, what's the understanding on material ownership? Would the stewardship organization have ownership of the material, or would the ownership of the material transition from the consumer to the program operator, either the recycling center or the curbside program?
You're asking whether or not the ownership of the container would automatically still remain with the stewardship organization before it's returned from the consumer?
No, under SB 38, who would own the material? Would the stewardship organization still retain ownership of the material and then just pay the recycling centers and the processors?
Yeah, I think that's a detail to be worked out, and the stewardship organization could kind of determine that, whether or not they were going to be the ones taking back the material, or whether they were going to pay somebody to take back the material and result in the recycling rates that are required under their plan. So I think, again, I mean, with EPR, there's a little bit more flexibility there. So it could be the recycling centers that they just pay. As long as they're achieving the recycling rate, it doesn't have to be one way or the other. And I believe that's how it's written in the bill, but I can go back and check.
Okay, thank you. And then Chair Sanborn, when the opportunity is there, I just want to amend some comments I've made in the past, but they're related to the comments from the Humboldt people that I think will enlighten everybody on why so many comments from Humboldt. So give them the opportunity. Let me know when I can make those comments.
Probably best under the committee report outs related to your work in the committee. That's okay? Okay, great. Commissioner Ward?
I was just wondering if there was any movement on a bill regarding potential export restrictions.
I can report that I have, on a different issue, I was speaking with a legislator. I'm not sure if they're ready for me to say it very publicly like this, about something else. And they had asked about what the commission's recommendations were, and I had mentioned one of the big ones was this export issue. They are working on a draft and actually contacted with Jim Phuket and have drafted a joint resolution for the Senate and the Assembly to ask Congress and the new administration about rejoining Basel. And but I don't know when that's going to be out. I know they're looking for support for that, and I don't think there's going to have a problem finding any. But that I'm very hopeful that resolution will come back, but it's not a bill. It's a resolution, and I believe that would then help bring awareness again as Secretary Blumenfeld was saying, and then get it back, because I know Mr. Wachowski, Senator Wachowski introduced and passed a resolution in 2019 on this, but it was really just the Senate, as far as I could tell, the way it was, and I can send you all a link. And I know we didn't mention it in our policy, we probably should have, that had already happened, but it's, again, another way to get it out there when it does come out, and we can all maybe, we'll have to ask CalRecycle again about our lines and making sure we're clear again on what we can and cannot do as a commission versus individuals that happen to be members of a commission. So we'll talk about that actually, and actually maybe Mindy, before you leave, we can talk about that, because this is under the legislative umbrella, I think.
Mm-hmm. I did want to amend, the bill SB 38 does include wine and distilled spirit coolers, but then exempts wine below. So wine is out, as are distilled spirits. However, coolers are in, which is similar to the existing program.
So it is different
and very
than the last
confusing in
bill.
statute, just like existing statute.
Thank you. Commissioner Potashner?
Hey, Happy New Year, Mindy. Can you speak to if there's anything in the governor's early proposals on workforce recovery or jobs that are related to recycling in the budget?
The governor's early proposals, well, certainly the governor's been clear that, you know, especially climate issues are a priority. And of course, that includes 1383. And so we'll still be working through that, and hopefully we'll see the budget very, very soon. And so we can all have a conversation once that's out and the proposals are clearer.
Lapis is next.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry, I don't know what was happening earlier. Good morning and Happy New Year, everybody. Mindy, a very similar question to Eric's. I saw yesterday the ZEV $1.5 billion proposal from the governor. Do you know how that affects fleets? And I mean, I saw it was trucks and trucks, buses, and freight were listed. How that affects the solid waste fleets? Because I know that was a big deal for a lot of folks in the industry.
Mm-hmm. That was zero emission vehicles for those who
yes,
clear.
Yeah.
Right,
electric
right.
vehicles, yeah.
You know, I'm not quite sure how that affects the fleets. Certainly it seems like they would be included, but we can go back and work with CARB to see that we can make sure that haulers are also, or the fleets are able to access funding.
Well, thank you.
I just saw something this morning about the budget proposal, and there is something in there, Commissioner Potashner, about jobs and recycling being a priority. So I'm hoping, you know, there will be some help there. Are there any other questions from commissioners of Mindy McIntyre about the bills coming? I think we probably have all heard different rumors. I guess, you know, as far as the report and the recommendations and the priorities, we prioritize batteries and gas cylinders. I haven't heard about gas cylinders yet of anybody picking up that. And then we prioritize, I think we talked about the waste prevention and the stuff like getting the PFAS out of foodware and some other things like that would make composting more safe and create markets, et cetera. So if you hear anything that's related to those, we'll definitely want to hear those, and we'll keep this as a standing item on the agenda, if that's okay with you, Mindy, to just make sure that we stay very close on and have you at every meeting from here on out while things are in process, so we understand what's going on in the legislature.
Sure, and again, we'll have more to report once the bill introduction deadline comes in.
What's the deadline again?
It's February. I always get the date wrong, but it is mid-February, so we'll know by then.
Okay.
Valentine's Day. It's always like a sweet little treat to get the full package of legislation.
Yeah, big bill dump.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and we'll just keep this as a standing item from here on out. And I guess before you go, we'll ask the CalRecycle staff again, just to make sure, because I was just looking through our commission charter, And I don't see anything in there about our ability to advocate for our recommendations individually or as a group. I was very pleased that we came together, 17 commissioners on 19 recommendations consensus, which we weren't sure we could do, but we did. So as a commission, where are we with the lines as far as what we can and cannot do? And I don't know if the legal staff is there or if we should just officially ask for them to help us with this or guide us on any changes to the charter or clarity in the charter that would help us. But we don't want to cross any lines and we want to be careful. So we just want to put that out there to the CalRecycle staff to help us with that, because we've heard very clearly from Secretary Blumenfeld. It'd be good if we could be out there educating people about these issues.
Heidi, thanks for the question, and we'll definitely bring that to legal and get back to you with a response.
And just a quick follow-up to that. Let's be specific when we use the word advocate. Is telling a reporter, hey, this is a great thing that California did. This is why we did it. If a reporter asks me, is that advocating? Or are we talking about lobbying and actually talking to legislators and lobbying activities, which I personally can't do as a 501c3. So I'd like to be really specific about what is allowed or not allowed.
Yeah, and we'll keep it specific to the commission and the commissioners as serving in your capacity as a commission member.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Commissioner Dell, because when I always say you're safe to say the facts. It's when you get into your personal opinion or which hat are we wearing? Are we saying this as a commissioner that voted for something? You're allowed to, say your opinion about why you voted for it. That was a public decision that was made in public, and you have a right to share that. If you advocate specifically for a policy or a bill number or a resolution that came on the heels of our recommendation, that's where I think I want to be clear. And that's where I'm fuzzy as to where I just want to be I think I know where it is, but I want to be very, very clear that all the commissioners are clear, because we are getting into the legislative season and we want to be sure that we're following the rules.
Of course. So we'll look into that and we will get back to you as soon as we can.
Great, thank you. And even a memo would be helpful or something, but if you think it should go in the charter, we can reopen that and put that on the agenda as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Zoe. Appreciate that. Okay, we're at 10:10, and we were going to have a break at 10 a.m. and then get into our committee reports. So we were hearing from Commissioner Osagura that he would prefer a 10-minute break, which seems more civilized. So if you're all okay with that, we'll come back at 10:20. Okay.
Thank you, Heidi.
Okay.
Civilized is nice for a change.
We're going to have a nice throttle back on the second phase of our work. So we'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, everybody can reconvene. Okay, welcome back. Even 10 minutes goes fast. Okay, so we'll wait for a couple more people to get back because we are going to start with commission or committee reports, agenda item number 6. I think Commissioner Davis will go ahead since you were the first committee chair back. Maybe we'll get started with market development committee. And obviously you haven't had a chance to meet since our last meeting, I don't believe. So why don't we go ahead and restart the meeting with agenda item number 6, committee reports on policy recommendations for commission discussion and possible approval. We'll turn it over to the chair of the Market Development Committee, John Davis.
So are you seeing my screen?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we are scheduled to meet next Monday at beginning at 9 a.m. We're going to pick up on topics that were tabled from our previous discussion around the state market development plan. So a lot of C&D material and C&D related issues. And then we have the refillable bottle on for discussion and glass minimum content, textiles, diapers, and sanitary products. We've had right to repair on our discussion list, although the commission did adopt a position on right to repair. It's still on our kind of our outstanding list, our working list. Discussion of state general plan guidelines, CEQA guidelines that are ongoing discussions, and then one of the vagaries in the state's market development existing language is to promote the competitive collection and use of secondary waste materials. So we've got a placeholder to discuss replacing competitive with efficient. I think competitive was kind of a time-bound language from 1993 and is no longer applicable. And then an outstanding issue on CalRecycle financing. So we'll be talking about these, probably creating subcommittees or assigning individual responsibility for them. And we did invite the Association of Plastics Recyclers and the Recycling Partnership to discuss their presentation on recycled polypropylene markets that the Commission received. They've been invited, but I've yet to have confirmation, although I keep trying to get a confirmation as to whether they'll actually be making the presentation and be available for discussions. So that's our meeting, and we're as I said, Monday the 11th at 9 a.m.
Can I ask a question just to back up the train, since we've just gotten through the first 6 months, and maybe all the committee chairs can do this, is just refresh us on the goals that we had to meet in the first report due in July, the official one in July 1st, for this committee that this committee was charged with that did not get done in the first report. Like, what are the highest priorities for market development to accomplish and give us to make sure we meet the goals of the bill that formed the commission?
Yeah, so our charge is very specific around Public Resources Code Section 42005B, which is these 4 items of market development: increasing market demand for materials, increasing demand for recycled content products, promoting efficient local waste diversion systems yielding high quality industrially usable feedstocks, and then this last one, promoting the competitive collection and use of secondary waste materials. So as the 6 recommendations came forward from the committee, we did indicate in the content of the written recommendations which of these items were addressed. So I'm not sure, Commissioner Sanborn, that there's a priority per se, because they're all, I think, equally important under the statute. I would say personally, I think we need to get back on the recycling or the financing issues around CalRecycle. That's probably one of the, off of this list. We've heard from permitting issues that there's CEQA issues that we need to take up and see what we can recommend. The other, the first 7 items on here are all kind of material specific recommendations. So begin diving down into that. I think the focus on C&D materials is because about 30% of the disposed waste stream is construction materials, inert and other material. And so there's a lot of big issues around getting 75% with that level of disposal of construction materials. So I guess that if that answers your question, I think it's, I would say financing, CEQA, and C&D are the big issues before this committee.
And I can ask, and maybe other commissioners have a question on this too, but why would market development have as the highest priority financing of CalRecycle?
I think it had to do, it came up on the market development side, and particularly in discussion of support for expanded facilities. The RMDD program is very limited in its financing capability, and I think the history of that program shows that there was an infusion of money in the first, let's say, 12 years of the program, and then that infusion stopped, and it pretty much goes along with repayments of the outstanding loan portfolio. So, but that discussion came up both at the commission and then a specific discussion at the committee about how to support the expansion of infrastructure in California under the existing limitations, and whether there might be some other approaches. So, yeah, I'm not sure we have a solution, but it did come up under particularly the infrastructure expansion.
Okay, because we did pass the RMDZ policy.
Right.
And I believe we addressed financing in there, in that they need more money to do that.
There was a specific recommendation on the RMDZ policy to use an iBank loan secured by the fund. I think the broader discussion was on CalRecycle's role in market development, and the commission did adopt a recommendation around that market development, but the financial support for that effort was removed. So, and kind of placed in abeyance under a subcommittee of the committee to discuss.
Okay.
Right, that's correct. That's how I remember it as well. And we do have some new wording that we can introduce and talk about at the next meeting.
Okay, good. I just think it's, as we start the next 6 months, and we'll be discussing how much we want to meet. I've heard from several of you that, this pace cannot be maintained. So we have to be thoughtful about what we're going to accomplish this next 6 months to make sure we're not at the last minute jammed at finishing the report at the last minute, that this is thoughtful and we're getting things done as early as we can that we need to finish in order to meet the statute first, and then we can do other things. So I just want to make sure each committee, we start this 6 months being very clear what the priorities of that committee are first, and getting those done to meet the statute, and then taking on anything else that would be, further down the list, and that we all agree as a commission what those things are. And I do want to note that Commissioners Valle and Bouchard had to step away for meetings. They'll be back. With that, because this is the list of things I've heard, one commissioner told me that they, didn't want to take up some of these flooring discussions anymore. But I think as a group, we should really agree what the committees are going to work on as priorities. And, you know, just looking at the volume issue and trying to maximize diversion, you know, asphalt roofing is 0.3%. Carpet is 1.3. You know, and then it's down from there in this category of inerts. So, but are there other things? Textiles is quite large as a category.
You're saying asphalt is 0.3 disposal?
That's what they said, that the asphalt.
That is not consistent with our experience. Not at all.
It's not, I can tell you, I don't think it's consistent with Alameda's either, because it's being illegally dumped. It's in the highest, I think tires and asphalt shingles are numbers 1 and 2 in the Alameda, as far as a single item that's constantly and regularly dumped. I'm actually working on that in my private life, but I'm bringing all that information to the committee. So anyway, I just think we've got to prioritize.
Yeah, and first of all, these were items that came before the committee, and we could certainly talk about prioritizing on Monday. The first 3 items, the flooring, drywall, and asphalt shingles, were all raised in public comments, and the committee took those comments and then agreed to look into them. So it wasn't really based on the percentage in the disposed stream. I think item 4 is something that Commissioner Toyota kind of began to focus on, that you know, the whole compliance with CalGreen and facility performance and what does get recycled. That's I think a larger topic. So yeah, you know, if we're going on percentage of waste stream, these are not the highest percentages, but they were specific items that were brought up to the committee's attention.
Well, diapers and sanitary products are I'm sorry, Commissioner, go ahead.
The program came up from talking to the folks who do the construction recycling. So I did a lot of outreach to them, and that was one of the things that they brought up was really important to them.
Yeah, and under the characterization study, 6.3% is just diapers and sanitary products. So clearly, number 7 is a priority. And I think at this point, right to repair, we've already done, correct? So we don't need to go revisit that, or it would just be discussed if it does, I believe, get introduced. Or maybe we just keep it on the radar if we need to update it, but.
Yeah, again, you know, this is what was outstanding from the prior list before the committee. So I think we talk about it on Monday and see what we want to remove or add.
Sounds good. Commissioner Schneider, do you have a comment?
Reuse, where reuse fits, where resale outlets fit. Chair Davis, we haven't really talked about it. It's all been lumped under the subcommittee of Commissioner Ward and myself. But, you know, that's a whole critical portion of our infrastructure that often operates completely outside of any government involvement. And sometimes that's to its detriment. So would it become a market development issue, or does it continue as something Commissioner Ward and I talk about, but doesn't really have a place?
Yeah, I mean, we tried to incorporate reuse and repair in the recommendations that were adopted by the commission, but they weren't specifically around that topic. And you're right, there's this commission kind of working group or subcommittee of the 2 of you, and we have the same issue around organics, where the organics committee is dealing with kind of market development related issues specific to organics. So we've you know, recognize that, and we could certainly again discuss how we do that, but on Monday. But it's difficult when there's a committee or a subcommittee working on a topic, and we take up the topic as Commissioner Sanborn said, the right to repair was addressed. You know, it's still on our list, but it got picked up and addressed by that working group. So I'm not sure how to answer that.
I can't speak for Commissioner Ward.
I was prepared to, yeah.
I can't speak for Commissioner Ward. Sorry. Chair Davis, I would just say, as one of the two subcommittees, I would love to see it come back to market development because there's a public process in there. And one of the things that I am hearing most from my region, and part of me that says, okay, we've been dealing with COVID for a year, we've got to get back to normal. And that is disposable takeout food packaging versus reusable takeout food packaging. And my community, not my city, my region, is really anxious to be pushing that. That's where the energy is with our advocates, our sustainability advocates out there. So if I'm sure Commissioner Ward and I can work on it, but market development, that means there's a forum for the public to come and speak or give comments to.
I completely agree, Commissioner Schneider, and I think the suggestion I would have is that you and Commissioner Ward develop proposals under reuse and bring them to the Market Development Committee for discussion and request Chair Davis add those to the agendas.
I'm happy with that. Thank you. I see Ted up there. I don't know where Ted is. So.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that, specifically on all the materials that are listed there that they've already started addressing. Absolutely. And there's absolutely a nexus not only for reuse of building materials, but deconstruction, which we also haven't discussed.
Yeah, and hopefully now that we slow the pace down probably a little bit, it would give you time to develop some individual proposals, because I know Commissioner Ward was working really hard on the report for a long time, which I'm eternally grateful for. In fact, we're still formatting it for accessibility, by the way. Ted has agreed to help us with that. Commissioner Lapis?
I just want to say that I think we heard a surprising number of people reach out about C&D in general. That's called shingles, but the other areas as well. One thing to consider is that as a whole, C&D is a very broad or a very big portion of the waste stream. And I think you could have a single recommendation for C&D that could cover several of these. And the other thing I would recommend considering is beyond state legislation. I know there's some really good local models for demolition ordinances and C&D ordinances. Specifically, I know Alameda County has a great one, and there's some others as well. So maybe a recommendation could have to do with providing a template, local ordinance that could be copied by others, or maybe best practices from local ordinances. Because I don't necessarily see a bill being introduced this year, but that doesn't mean local governments can't take it on.
Yeah, we have CalGreen, so and we had a presentation about CalGreen and its kind of limitations, where it's focused on overall performance rather than individual materials, and really doesn't address recycled content, which is, I think, key to driving markets, as you know.
I mean, I'm pretty far from being an expert on C&D, but I see the ecosystem of recyclers that's developed in the Bay Area as a result of their ordinances, and it makes me think that it's a pretty good model.
We can discuss that on Monday at the committee meeting then, about how to deal with C&D and these various items. That was a good thought, Commissioner Lapis. Commissioner Schneider, do you have another thought?
Just real quickly, before we go to end of pipe, I would like to see us discuss and push up adaptive reuse in place, adaptive reuse by relocation, the whole concept of monster homes, tearing down smaller homes to build huge monster houses, and the recognition of embodied energy in existing building materials. So there's a whole reuse or source reduction component that gets lip service. So
yeah, I encourage
market development. I can bring that up, but I wanted the rest of the commission to know that adaptive reuse has to be on our list. It has to be discussed, and that goes along with historic preservation, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, well, we'll look for some proposals from you and Commissioner Ward, and they can come to the Market Development Committee, and we can make sure that this all gets incorporated into the next report. I think Commissioner Ward did a really nice job of addressing waste prevention in the report. He wrote all that text, basically. So, and thanks for keep bringing that up, because we want to get to source reduction, waste prevention. Is there anything else for the Market Development Committee that anybody would like to bring up now?
Just one update on the presentation on polypropylene. I just received an email, so it looks like we will have a presentation as scheduled at our meeting. So.
Great. Okay. And then I will just mention that, as you know, we've had many times been contacted about the issue of chemical recycling. Is it market development? Is it recycling? Is it something else? And I had emails back and forth with Tim Shestek about this, and he, you know, they tend to think that this is a, you know, because I've reiterated, and Commissioner Valle was on this email string, that we had asked that they submit proposals to present to our commission about what exactly is the technology, how does it meet the three-part test, so that it is recycling, which is under our purview, and then we can take it up. And we're getting a lot of very general information and information about legislation in other states and whether they're considering it recycling or not, and our state making something into fuel is not. So I'll just put it back out there. We are happy to hear presentations from potential new markets for items that fit the definition of recycling in California. It feels to me like that request is getting beyond, it's getting into the you know, advising the legislature on what the definition of recycling is, which is actually the definition of what's recyclable is what we've been tasked with, but not what is recycling. So I guess I just want to throw that out for the commissioners, because we did say we would open it up for presentations. I think they're claiming it's kind of a market development issue. We're talking about the Market Development Committee. Any thoughts on this, or any suggestions on, am I doing anything wrong? Should we give different feedback to the groups in the chemical recycling world? And I'll open it to Commissioner Dunleavy.
Yes, thank you. Just for clarification, with commission members that are not on other committees, I guess we could watch the video, but what's the process for commission members to be able to ask questions regarding a subcommittee? So if we wanted to ask the people from APR regarding the polypropylene issue, what's the process that allows us as non-subcommittee members to ask questions during that meeting?
My understanding is if you're not on the agenda as a presenter or as a speaker or part of that committee, that you cannot as a commissioner. And I'll go back and relook at the advice we've been given by CalRecycle. But my understanding is we can watch them, but we cannot participate in them until that item comes to the full commission. Did I get that wrong, or is there anybody that reads it differently? Okay, I see Ted nodding his head. So I think that's what we've agreed is the process to keep out of the Bagley-Keene problem. Because it wasn't noticed that we're having the public discussion as a commission, as a committee with those members.
All right, and then
if you want to participate in, I'm sorry, if you wanted to participate in that discussion, I mean, now would be the time to bring up any concerns or any, because now you're on the commission, we're discussing that committee. This would be a good time if you have any concerns about it.
Okay, I think I addressed a lot of them at the last meeting we had on the 16th or 18th, and specifically for polypropylene, I had asked all the commission members to contact their local MRFs, their local recyclers, to find out who's actually doing it. And I'd just like to hear from the commissioners if anybody had reached out to their local recyclers, material recovery facilities, to find out who's actually doing it, who's actually separating polypropylene material at their facilities. So if the work that the recycling committee has done that identified items that are recyclable and those that could be, if we made any errors or need to make any modifications, we need more information. But I think the work that we've done was good. But I'd just like to ask the commission members if they've reached out to their local facilities to find out who's actually separating polypropylene material.
Commissioners with their hands up, maybe they can answer this question and add to it. Commissioner Toyota? Then Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, it wasn't about what Commissioner Dunleavy was just saying, so if you want to finish that conversation, that's fine.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward?
Same, I don't have a response to Commissioner Dunleavy.
Okay, then I'll just ask, did anybody have a response to Commissioner Dunleavy? Was anybody able to reach out? It was over the holidays. I'm not sure how much people were doing there.
Yeah, we're doing a small amount up in our Humboldt operation, trying to get some more clarity on those end markets, but honestly, it's almost hand sorting and it's highly inefficient and we're not generating nearly that much volume.
Thank you, Petitioner, Commissioner Petitioner. Is there anybody else in response to this question? Commissioner Kalbakoff?
Yeah, I did a survey about 2 months ago with our MRFs in Southern California, and 11 responded, and 7 out of the 11 actually sort polypropylene. We currently do it at my facility as well. We have optical sorters that do it. We do about a load a month, so about 20 tons a month. It gets shipped to domestic markets. So there is a market for it. You do, again, I think to touch on what Eric said, you do need some technology to sort that out efficiently. But if you do have the technology, there are markets for it.
Ask how much that technology costs.
An optical sorter is roughly, I think they're about $350 to $450, depending on what kind of infrastructure you have and where they can put it.
Plus installation costs, plus power, plus. So that's a good investment.
Yeah.
So if the industry wants to help us recover this stuff, then somebody's got to pay for it. So,
Yeah,
okay.
I'll point out, actually, Closed Loop Partners did a study of this and a payback on based on installation costs and labor required. And at 12, and so it's a report. You could Google it. Closed Loop Partners, polypropylene, and at 12 cents a pound, I think it was about a 5-year payout. And I think we're down for when it is bought, it's closer to 4 cents. So that would be looking at like a 15-year payout all in. So I would say that's a reference point that was actually published by the industry of how expensive it is.
Well, one of the advantages of an optical sorter is it can be adjusted based on market demand and market conditions, and what's you can adjust them to pick out certain. It's a computer, so you can have it sort different plastics. You can have it sort ones, twos. We've got multiple opticals, and you have to adjust with the industry. And once you have that infrastructure, you can do that. But again, if you're, and I agree with Jan, I think if you're putting this in just for, the polypropylene, it may not make sense with the current market conditions. But again, it's based on, crude oil. I mean, it's petroleum product, and the demand is fluctuates up and down with oil costs. I mean, and you can't, look into the future and build something based upon crude that's going to go up and down based on local or federal policies. So that's it.
I guess that's the feedback, Commissioner Dunleavy. Unless anybody else has a response to Commissioner Dunleavy, Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, and I did check with Vertec and at their MRFs, and similar to what what you heard from Mr. Potashner, there's hand pulling going on now. We actually did a reprogramming of our optical disorder to try to get a handle on how much additional polypropylene can get pulled, because the hand sorting obviously is limited. And we haven't really rolled that number up. We're not sure our sorter was firing properly on the polypropylene, so we want to do some adjustment and maybe run it again. But so we were trying to get an idea of how much additional polypropylene is out there. It's one thing to know a yogurt tub or margarine container, but there are other items that come through that you don't know what they are until the optical identifies. So we're looking at that. The other option is, for us anyway, if we ended up reprogramming, it would be because we would take one of the items that's now recovered on the optical and do a better recovery method for that. So we're looking at that, and as Commissioner Dell mentioned, Closing Partners not only did some analysis, but is offering funding to support the recovery. And I think they made their first 4 awards in December. They were all on the East Coast. So I'm hearing questions and items for discussion during Monday's presentation. So I'd encourage everybody to look at what was sent to the Commission, if you haven't already, on polypropylene, because they identify a number of MRFs. I think they said 53, I'm working from memory, but that are recovering polypropylene. I don't know how many of those were in the 3.7 category. I don't know where those numbers came from. So I've asked some very specific questions to be discussed on Monday. If it's appropriate, I'm not sure how people how other commissioners might be able to forward questions, if that's appropriate. But I've heard discussion today of topics. I know under Bagley-Keene, we can work through staff, so you might be able to forward a question to the staff person we're working with, Kate, and let her then compile those questions and make sure they get addressed. I think that's appropriate under Bagley-Keene, but not having the direct contact between the commissioners. So, but yeah, I'm hearing items that we definitely want to bring up and understand what the market development potential is for that material. The chart that they did show on the volume is pretty high, but we're not recovering anywhere close to the potential of it. So.
Okay, so we've gotten a response to Commissioner Don Levy from, unless there's anybody else that did some research on this. And then if anybody's interested, we hope you can, tune in on the meeting Monday. We don't, at NSAC, we don't record the committee meetings. We only record the commission meetings. So CalRecycle can give you a copy of, if you can't attend the meeting, they can send you a copy. You just have to do a public information request of the video. Okay, let's get back.
It is scheduled with a time specific at 10:40 a.m. So if you want to just dial in for that.
Okay.
So with market development, they talk about funding, but they're also taking time to hear from an industry that is promoting a product that just isn't recycled a whole lot. They even admit that it's not reaching their potential. So they're promoting the sale of their product, saying, oh, it could be recycled. But it does come down to financing. And I think Commissioner Dell was pretty close to current market pricing, around 4 cents. But a 5-year payback would need it to be 12 cents. And if it's going to a domestic market, maybe in the Southeast, we're looking at freight costs of about 8 cents. So it'll be interesting to see when that industry decides to actually put a facility in California to cut down the freight costs, to hopefully provide a better payback for facilities to either hand sort or dial in their opticals to do actual recovery. Because when PP or the PP5 has gone through optical sorts, contamination is pretty high, and it has a sink rate because it's shooting on the polypropylene labels for number 2 bottles, number 1 bottles, typically in the 5 to 15% contamination rate. And it's a question of what the facilities are doing with that material. And their presentation, they do say that the PP5 market is recovering from National Sword. So I think with that, they're partially admitting that PP5 was a part of the problem creating National Sword, where we were shipping material around the world that was getting disposed of or something else because it wasn't being recycled. So I think until that group actually puts facilities in California to spend time to help them sell their product, I don't think it's a good use of the commission time where we're volunteers.
And I'd just like
to promote their thing.
Wait.
I'd like to add one fact.
Okay, that's
one fact to that. I just looked up the U.S. EPA Sustainable Materials Management Report for 2018, which is the most recent, and nationwide 0.6% of polypropylene was recycled, 0.6%, which is consistent to what we see everywhere that's less than 1.1%. And if you just look at containers and packaging, the EPA report says 2.7% of polypropylene is recycled. So you can see where it is nationwide, and those are facts.
Thank you. I think, go ahead.
And Chair Sanborn, I think the same would be said for the chemical recycling people. We're not the Chamber of Commerce. We're not the decision makers. If the people want to do chemical recycling and it's a viable process and it's economically feasible, I think they should find places within California that they could open up facilities and create jobs as is, instead of using this commission as a forum to advertise a process or a product that could help their cause. I don't think we should be doing that, or spending our time promoting a method that might not be acceptable in California. I think they need to find local
we have to be
partners.
careful. Let me interrupt for a second. So you have to be careful how we frame it. By hearing somebody out, we're not promoting anything. We're simply listening to input, which is our job and what we're required to do under the law. If we were to take something up and say, yes, we agree with you, we're promoting this, that, yes, but I want to be careful about being honest about what we're doing. If a committee is hearing something, that's not promotion. It is floor time for sure. And that is a choice as to how we spend our very precious time. So I totally hear that comment, absolutely. And I do want to read, just so you guys all hear, the email that Tim just sent back to me and Commissioner Valle on the 31st. It says, in looking at the three-part test, it would seem to me that yes, these types of facilities would qualify, whether a facility is regulated as a recycling facility or as a manufacturing facility may be a secondary point. Materials separated at the curb and then at a MRF from a drop-off program and sent to an advanced recycling facility to be used as feedstock to make a new product, in my view, constitutes recycling and should count towards any recycling requirement or target. I continue to believe this is a larger policy discussion worthy of discussion. That's where I thought this is the point to bring it up to all of you, that I believe they are considering this a market development issue. We have said it is not until you show us you've met the three-part test for any technology, then we can hear it, because then it's about us meeting the recycling goals. I just want to be very transparent, make sure you know the communications I've had with them, and that I'm honoring your wishes the way we're handling it. So is there anything different I should say to Mr. Shestak, the American Chemistry Council, or any of these folks? Or do we want to just simply invite them maybe a few months down the road or whatever to the full commission to just say their piece and have a few minutes? That doesn't mean we're promoting anything. Or do we want to just hold the line and say, you've got to show us how you meet the three-part test? Any technology. Commissioner, I'm going to just take fingers up at this point, because we're focused on polypropylene and chemical recycling and are these market development issues. So we'll stick to this for a minute and then go back to Commissioner Toyota. Commissioner Sky.
Just a question, because I don't think we're asking any other facilities to demonstrate that they meet the three-part test, and I don't know if there's a process CalRecycle even has to get a certification or validation of that. So I think I don't know how we navigate that, but we should just have the presentation. I think we all decided that we didn't really want to focus or micromanage what the process was at a recycling or remanufacturing or, you know, chemical facility, whatever the heck it is. If it meets the three-part test, it was recycling and we would be promoting it. And I think we should just have the conversation, which I think is what the commission decided we would do, is this year focus on that topic and try to develop some consensus recommendations on it.
That's kind of how I thought we were just going to at least give them some airtime. I remember Commissioner Potashner talking about this as well. I don't see him on the call right now, but
I'm here. Yes.
Oh, there you are. I mean, isn't that what I recall you saying, is that you thought?
Yeah, I think for the commission to have credibility, we need to welcome all folks that want to participate, and this is a major industry. Whether or not it works or it doesn't work, we should at least hear them out and give them the same opportunity we're giving everybody else.
And I would prefer it be at the full commission level, because this is such a high level issue. If you're okay with it, I'd be happy to invite them to the next meeting to give a presentation, and then that way it's done. We can hear it. We can have a public discussion with all of us together, and then we decide how we want to handle it and if there's anything any particular committee should handle. Is everybody okay with that tactic? Is there anyone who doesn't like that tactic?
Can I add a comment?
Please.
I think to Kobe's earlier point, it's, you know, to the extent that some of these technologies are recycling, we want to hear how to develop those markets. I think we don't want to necessarily hear about the ones that are not recycling in California. And in making their presentation, I'm hoping we can kind of set that boundary of, or, you know, the point isn't to change what is recycling. The point is for them to talk about the market development of the technologies that are recycling. And specifically, I'd like to hear the track record. Definitely heard some mixed things about individual technologies, but would love to hear about the track record. And, you know, again, I've said this before, but I don't think it's a helpful construct to frame this as chemical recycling. It means the equivalent of a, you know, if we were a nutrition advisory committee and somebody asks us to promote dessert because apples are a dessert. You know, we should talk about the fruit, right? But not all dessert is going to fall under the category of things we promote. And I think chemical recycling is the same. You can use a chemical recycling technology, an acid-based chemical recycling technology, for example, to recover polypropylene or whatever back to polypropylene, and that's recycling and it counts as diversion. And, you know, there's nothing that needs to be changed about that in law, as opposed to, well, I'm not going to go repeat the same comment I've made 3 or 4 times at this point. Okay. But I did want to make sure that we focus on the parts of chemical recycling that are relevant to the commission.
Right, and that's what I've said repeatedly. So I think I will go ahead then, and I will invite, and I'll make sure Vice Chair Valle is on the email, invite Tim Shestak's group to come and present to the commission at the January 20th or the February 3rd meeting, whatever works for them, on what they believe, which technologies they believe meet that 3-part test and are considered recycling, which would be in our purview and something that we could take up under market development if, and then we could ask questions as a full commission, since this is all very new and there's a lot of questions about it. I might give this, if you're okay with it, up to, you know, an hour between a short, you know, maybe a 15, 20-minute presentation tops, and then a lot of time for questions. So you all have enough time for questions, and then we can also shorten it if we don't need all that time. Is there anybody who doesn't like that idea? Or okay with that? All right. So then we'll go ahead and do that way. So we're still on the Market Development Committee. We've dealt with the chemical recycling requests, or whatever the appropriate term is. And we're talking about polypropylene, which will be heard on the agenda on the Market Development Committee on Monday. So listen in and we'll see how that goes. And we hear the commissioners who've been working on that. Thank you for all your input, and thank you for the people who did check to see if there were markets for it here in California. So is there anything else on the Market Development Committee? I think I'll go back to Commissioner Toyota, had raised her hand quite a while ago.
Thanks. And it kind of goes back to what is recycling and what is recyclable and that difference, and the Market Development Committee. And I think one of the things that we do need to talk about is when we look at that list and how we're going to open up markets for them, that we try to talk about some language that can incorporate new technology, whether it's the chemical recycling or anything else. When we look at market development and we say the flooring, you can do minimum content with vinyl flooring. So if we do that, we create a market, but we don't necessarily, in some ways, we might be closing off a lot of innovation if we lock that material into that one specific diversion. So if there's some way during that committee meeting, we can talk about language to open that up, that this is where you can start because we know this works. But if something comes up where there's some innovation and CalRecycle will, or whoever will approve that as something as a certified diversion, then you have the freedom to move and utilize those technologies. And then as anything comes up, then the market is innovative rather than being closed down. And I think that's something really important to talk about in that meeting on Monday. And then as far as, you know, everything that's going on with the polypropylene, I think this really outlines the fact that we need a really specific way to get, or outlined way of saying, how do you get on the recyclable list so that it's not subjective? Do you meet criteria A, B, C, D, and that's it? And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Yes, thanks. I appreciate the work of the Market Development Committee, but I wanted to mention, especially in light of the construction and demolition materials, that what are the drivers that bring people to choose the materials that they choose to make their products? And so specifically, that makes me think in terms of oil production, you know, the extraction and process, the subsidies for producing oil and bringing it into the market are part of what makes the economy of plastics being very cheap and available and adaptable to choose and use in packaging products. And I just recognize that part of the thrust of chemical recycling is the challenge of people who are trying to market these plastics, is they want to say they're recyclable, they want to say they do good things, but mostly they just want to get them into a use somehow. And that the chemical recycling discussion is, well, okay, what good thing can we say is going to happen after it's found its use? But part of the challenge to me of this is that we're not dealing with the subsidies, the things that make the petroleum products such a large part of our economy to begin with. Unless we start to deal with that challenge, we're going to ever be on the back end of trying to figure out, what are we going to do with this material? How are we going to respond to this industry who wants to use this material in a way that they say is good, even though what they really want is just to shove the material into the market? That's my perspective. But I wanted to voice that because I think part of the challenge that we're facing now is how do we reconcile and set priorities navigating the conflicting things that we have. So when we're talking about construction and demolition materials, even though it's not part of the Commission's work right now, we have a big crisis right now in terms of treated wood waste. And that is created in part because that material is required under the building codes. And buying being required, then it's part of the material stream we're supposed to deal with. And yet when we have restrictions on how we can deal with that as a waste material, we're caught in the middle because the folks are using it because of the building codes and we have to manage it, but we don't have a way to manage it. So I think increasingly what we need to think about is, how are we going to set an overall framework in which we can discuss these different competing market forces that are essentially driving our economies in ways that we say we want, but in fact we're not incentivizing.
This is a good point, and I was going to raise this at the end of the committee reports, but I'll raise it now. When it comes to writing the next report, I definitely want to get it going a lot sooner and have a lot more time with the full commission on the whole report, especially this next one, which will be our final for the year. And, you know, if you're okay with it, I think Commissioner Ward has brought up a very important point about the fundamental subsidization of virgin extraction of any material that is then therefore creating an economic disadvantage for us at the back end to recycle. That is a fundamental issue that we did not address in the original report. Is there anybody who would be opposed to addressing that in the text of the next report? Because if not, Ted and I could start on that next report and start with that section about the issue of fundamental subsidies of virgin extraction that are causing the economic problems we're seeing at the back end, making recycling work financially.
I'd like to add to that suggestion, actually, because we did assign a working group to work on how we can adapt the information from Oregon's efforts. And I think if we had even a brief suggestion from that two-person committee that we could then incorporate into a proposal that we bring forward, I think that would be a good process where we don't lose that good working group.
Fine with that. Is there anybody else that would, so which working group is that? Who was working on Oregon? I think it was Commissioner Lapis.
I am, and yeah.
And Commissioner Cadena, are you open, or Toyota, are you open to that?
Yeah, I think we should. You know, I'm sorry, Nick, because I haven't gotten back to you. I've done some reading on Oregon, and I'll tell you one of the things that is really relevant to this conversation is that, you know, they did a framework, but then they have it's 578. It's basically their method of carrying out the framework, and it's really focused on EPR, and but it's a broad EPR program. So what they're suggesting is that there's a basic, broad, very well outlined EPR program that if you have a covered material, you automatically get put into that program. And it's very specific and yet very broad. And so it can accommodate to all kinds of different materials. And they also did a lot of background work on how the materials or how EPR helps with keeping markets open, stabilizing markets, things that we could also fall back on as well that's already been done. But I really liked it, and I got, you know, some of the ideas of kind of keeping the markets open and not just specifically focusing on minimum content or one specific item or one specific material. And as Secretary Bloomfield said, you know, is it worth the squeeze? So this would be, and this would help cover and kind of bring a lot of things together. And not only that, but since Oregon's doing it, we would be supporting them. You know, we could work together on this to bring it out, you know, in conjunction as much as we can. So I think that that's important. I do want to say, you know, I can't stress this enough. I have not talked to David Allen or anyone like that about it yet, but these are the things that I have been thinking about, and I will absolutely work with Commissioner Lapis, and we'll get a hold of David Allen and see how we can bring this together. And we'll bring it back, and it should be something standing on the agenda.
I was just going to suggest that. I think what we need to do is make space under the committee report outs for all the two-person committees. So I think what I'm going to do on the next agenda is actually call out the two-person committees in addition to the actual standing larger committees. And everybody will report out. And then if we can discuss as a commission, if some of the two-person committee, where should this item go to which bigger committee for more public discussion, et cetera. So why don't we plan on that all the two-person committees report out with the big committees every single month or every single meeting.
Just make one suggestion there.
Yeah, of course.
So with, you know, EPR is definitely one method to get at some of the issues that Ted's talking about. Another is around taxation. And I don't think we have anybody sort of focused on that or bringing in an outside expert to talk about either virgin taxes or taxes at the producer level. And that would be good for the commission to have some expertise present to us on.
Great idea. Do you have any suggestions on who that might be?
I can look in. I don't think it's somebody from this commission. I think we can do a little research and maybe figure out who to invite.
Yeah, maybe Eunomia. I know they've done a lot of work looking at the taxes in Norway and Europe.
I can do that because I know them pretty well. So let me go ahead and contact Eunomia and ask if they could do it or if they know of somebody who would be good at with this tax issue. But it'd be nice to have somebody, well, they're based in the United States now. They've got a New York office. Okay. I could start there, and then Eric, if you can think of anybody else, just email me and let me know, but we'll get that on a future agenda. I really like that. But here's what I'd like to do since this came up under Ted's issue. On the next report, Ted and I, in my opinion, wrote too much of it. I think it's very important that everybody really get a piece of this final report. We're happy to tie it all together and all of that, but I think we need to have the two-person committees and others write a couple paragraphs about what they did and submit it and get it, and then we can put it in the bigger report for everybody to see and how it would flow and all of that. Because and we just, because of the time, we just had to do a lot at the very end, which is what we were hoping not to do, but it's what happened. So, I'm just going to throw it out there that I think it'd be helpful if everybody could write just a little bit and help us plug it in, and then we can pull it all together. That the initial thought was not that he and I would basically be writing it. So, okay, so those are all really good things, and we have to go back to our commenters. I think next one was Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, and I just re-entered STAR, so you can ignore my most recent one. But on the issue of the petroleum subsidies, I think it would be good to talk about the change in that industry. As there were a lot of flurry of information last year about the focus of the petroleum industry on plastic production rather than fuels. And I think that's really important, particularly as you talk about the depletion allowances that were really created to support the fuel production and the energy side of petroleum. And now it's being, the investments are really going into plastics. And so I just wanted to share that thought. It's one of the big picture items that I see. We can do all we want to try to recycle this stuff, but it's going to keep coming down the pike because that's where the future of that industry seems to lie from everything I've read. So, and then I think Commissioner Sanborn, you had suggested to me there might be a need for information request about asphalt shingles. So I just wanted to bring that up. Whether we do it now, I think it was for the committee and possibly if we can get anything by Monday. So
yeah, we'll do it officially Monday probably. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do it Monday. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you so much. And then we can move on. It looks like we have a public comment, but it's not related to an agenda item. So I'll hold on that for just a minute. Commissioner Lapis, is there anything else you wanted to add?
There were two asterisks Commissioner Snyder and I had placed before Commissioner Davis. You may not have
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just I think Commissioner Snyder was first.
Sorry, go ahead.
This is referencing back to subsidies for welfare or subsidies for extractive industries. If we all go back to our welfare for wasting documents, you're going to find that there are some other additional things structurally in place to help extractive industries. I'd also like, if we're going to open up that doorway, we need to look at how again, the reuse industry is generally not part of the financial structure of solid waste, and they have to compete using their own dollars. Bulky goods is a good example of that compared to the franchised hauler. So it opens up the doorway to look at other financial mechanisms that give advantages to one industry type over another type, and it especially hits the reuse industry.
Good point. In fact, I forwarded an email to Commissioner maybe I forgot to, I don't know, Commissioner Potashner about one of my colleagues said they suggested that we really look at infrastructure support financially for food reuse because everything's volunteer and it would happen if they had more sustainable funding sources, but they're always trying to scrape for every penny and every volunteer to make the food reuse happen. So, or, getting food to the people who need it. So while it's edible. Okay, well, this has been a very interesting discussion because this is the big picture stuff. I think now is the time to go back and recalibrate where we're going for the next 6 months. And I know we've got some more comments here, so we'll move on. Who was the next? Was
Commissioner
it you?
Sky?
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to have a conversation about the report, and I'm really glad that we're talking about the subsidies, the perverse subsidies that incentivize particularly plastics manufacturing, but it's really three components that have led us to where we are. Very cheap production costs, very cheap disposal costs, and a nearly complete disconnect between the manufacturing and the externalized costs, whether it's litter, pollution, all the other things. And I would love to see a section of the report to connect those three issues together and talk about how we can shift policy. And I think EPR is a part of it, taxation is a part of it, but there are other solutions that address those fundamental core issues that have gotten us to where we are. And I'm glad to see some heads nodding.
Would you be open to taking a stab at writing that?
I'm happy to work. Hopefully there's another commissioner that can do a two-person committee on that, because it's a big topic, but I definitely feel strongly about having it as part of the report. I'm happy to work on it.
You're quite a wordsmith. I really appreciate what you contributed to the last report. And I don't think that doing these kind of serial meetings where we're talking about the process at the whole commission level, I don't think it's a problem. And I think you're bringing a separate idea. So I'd say go ahead and draft those few paragraphs and have the Oregon working group work on the Oregon thing, pass that to us, and then we'll try to bring it all together for something the whole commission.
And we can all wordsmith together. But at least that way, each commission, somebody's writing a bit and piece, and then Ted and I will format it and outline it, put it in orders, and get your feedback. I love that. Thank you so much. Commissioner Donlevy, are you next?
Yeah, just a last question for Commissioner Davis. Maybe if you could ask the APR people as part of their presentation to talk about any recycling programs for the woven polypropylene material that they're doing at hospitals, because woven polypropylene for gowns, surgical wraps, things like that, it's probably a very high percentage of what they're claiming is recyclable material at our local hospitals, and we're generating even more. So could you ask them if they have any recycling programs in California or the U.S. that help hospitals recycle all the woven polypropylene blue wrap material that they're selling them?
Yeah, I had marked up the presentation that they shared with the commission, and it shows, for example, generation and recycling rates that are kind of inconsistent with what we're seeing on the statewide waste characterization and other information. They also show in aligned with one of your earlier comments, they also show two reclaimers in development in California. So I hope maybe we can dig into that a little deeper and understand what obstacles they're facing or how far along they are, if they can identify who they are. So there's a lot of information in that on those slides that I think we'll be diving into on Monday.
Commissioner Davis, are you next after Commissioner Sky?
No, I had put a star in earlier, and then you called on me, and then I withdraw the one, the latter one. So.
Well, this was a very big and productive discussion about markets and the committee work and the report, and so thank you. We got a lot of stuff done here, and I appreciate it. The polypropylene and the American Chemistry Council requests, and we'll get those invited. So I think we can move on. We've got our last three committees, and then we could talk two committees if we actually want to have time for that. Why don't we go now to the Recycling Committee and Commissioner Donlevy.
Chair Sanborn, before we continue, Audrey from CalRecycle, just wanted to clarify, could we verbalize those data requests regarding the asphalt shingles formally?
We're going to do it at the committee on Monday, if that's okay. I mean,
Okay,
basically,
so you're not submitting. We'll
go ahead and do it at the public committee meeting on Monday. It's fine. There's nothing I mean, basically it's coming because we're going to probably ask for information about what's been happening on asphalt roofing shingles.
Okay, and then just to let you know, there are 3 pending public comments. One not
Are they
related,
related?
and two related.
Okay, the 2 that are related, why don't we go ahead with those, please?
Okay, from Randy Pollock. Isn't LA County supportive chemical recycling? Shouldn't the commission look to see how the law can be changed to encourage this technology to assist California in meeting its recycling needs? And then from Winston Hickox, private citizen, titled Metal Recycling. California should solve states' problems, not cause new ones, by Winston Hickox and James Strock. In the iconic 1960s movie The Graduate, a would-be mentor takes the new college graduate Dustin Hoffman aside at a party and cryptically says, "I want to say just one word to you, plastics. There's a great future in plastics. Today, we're living that future, trillions of plastic items, single-use bags, straws, cups, bottles, and pouches. While some items have reduced costs and aided our convenience, most are now choking our planet, killing marine life, and polluting our oceans, waterways, and beaches. Some plastic items are recyclable, but many are not, and the glut of plastic is overwhelming our capacity to recycle these items. The U.S. Senate recently held a series of hearings on the national plastics problems. Californians have long been committed to recycling. Regrettably, our state government has not always advanced the cause, and that is the 150-word limit. Everything else is published, including the other comment that is not related to a agenda item.
Okay, thank you. We won't take any more that aren't related to agenda items at this point. Those can be read by commissioners. And I just want to point out that that is the previous 2 secretaries of Cal EPA, Commissioner Strock and Commissioner Winston Hickox, or I mean, Commissioner, the secretaries of Cal EPA. And they just did a editorial, I believe it was, in Cal Matters about the issue of metal recycling as well. That they're facing and the shredders in the state. But that comment was related to plastics, and I'm very glad that they're following the commission work and weighing in. So thank you for that. And we heard you, Randy. So, and I think we'll get the presentation by the American Chemistry Council on the agenda, and we'll take it from there. So I think with that, we'll go on to the Recycling Committee. Commissioner Dunleavy? See there?
Okay, thank you. We are scheduled to meet on January 22nd. I reached out to the committee members to see if there's items that they would like to add to the agenda. I think the only thing that we have at this point will be some discussion on the pathway to getting on the list, if there's any additional discussion there. And I think at some point we're going to reach out to Cal Recycle and ask them if there's some of the people that they've provided grant money to for plastics recycling to come to the facility and talk about how the grant money has been used and if it has actually increased the recovery of plastic bottles. Other than that, the committee is, I'll say, light on action items at this point, and it might be something that possibly February we stop meeting as a subcommittee and just address the issues at the commission level. And I think that's something that we need to start thinking about. At what point do the subcommittees stop meeting and we just have all the information addressed at the commission level? Because one of the things I was going to mention out of respect to Commissioner or Director Wagner, our committees are meeting more often than the Cal Recycle meeting. And we might be taking away some of their thunder where different stakeholders are using our committees as their venue to voice their concerns, when I think they should be directed to the main Cal Recycle meeting that is every month. So we're more available than Cal Recycle. So I think we're at a point where we're taking their thunder, and I think we need to start toning down the number of meetings that we have to let Cal Recycle do their normal job.
Okay. Well, I guess I would just say one thing. Obviously, it's not my personal opinion, we're taking their thunder. I mean, we're just doing what we were tasked to do. And we also have been very clear that we are not the venue for directing comments at Cal Recycle. So when they do that, we push back. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that because we've done that before and said that clearly in the record. So, but point taken, we are becoming more accessible. So, but if we don't be if we're not accessible, we're going to get in trouble as well, because that was what the update to the bill actually required, is making sure, double ensuring that we're being available and taking public comments, even though it was already in the law. So we're doing our best. But I guess when it comes to how often your committee meets, I would go back to the question I asked Commissioner Davis about that committee. What tasks was the recycling committee given that out of the law? Are there any still left to meet that we are required to provide by July 1st? Have we met every recycling committee task that we had on the list?
I think we have at this point. We've talked about identifying what is recyclable. We've talked about the pathway to being on that list. We've talked about the bottle bill and convenience zones, and we've added additional items on e-waste packaging, plastic, design for recyclability of plastic bottles, and I think that complements what the labeling committee is doing.
E-waste packaging was not a recommendation though, right? I don't recall.
What was that?
I did get a question from someone that asked if we had done a proposal on e-packaging. Didn't you say that you'd taken that up? But I don't recall.
E-commerce packaging?
Yeah.
Yes.
But there's no proposal specific to that, right? To date?
Not at this point, no.
There was one that we had written, but I think at the end of December we just decided it needed a little bit more time because it was very last minute.
Okay. The labeling system for products, and I have the one that got put off was the labeling system for products and post-consumer management.
No, we had one on e-commerce about the plastic pouches. I believe, Jan.
Yeah, but we did not move it forward. Related to that, we did move forward was the policy recommendation that recycle symbols should be taken off plastic bags and films. And those are really the things that we're concerned about with the e-packaging. Is this plastic waste getting generated, consumers looking at the recycle symbol and then putting it in their recycle bin, as I've seen my neighbors do countless times. And so that part got moved forward, but the requirement, the bigger discussion on requiring all e-commerce packaging to be curbside recyclable, that did not move forward. It was viewed as a very complex topic, and it's one that actually had been addressed by the legislature already. So no, that making all curbside packaging, e-commerce curbside packaging recyclable did not move forward.
That's what I thought. That's what I had told them. I just want to make sure I got it straight. But 18 does, I guess, address some of it with the bags. Okay. Well, I guess my only thought is, fine dissolving committees if we don't need them. I'm just not sure we've done everything we could do. If we today told everybody we dissolved the recycling committee because we've done all that work, I'm not sure that would pass the red face test because there's so much to do. And maybe but that's completely up to the commission. If you guys think that we're done with those things. Any thoughts on that from other commissioners? I see Commissioner Schneider had her hand up.
A couple of questions for, thank you, Chair, Commissioner Donlevy. Refillables. I think Commissioner Ward and I have talked about them. I reached out to various refillable entities, but then we thought that the recycling committee was going to be looking at refillables. So clarification of that would be helpful. At our very last 2020, ever so long ago, full commission meeting, talked about that if the recommendations from the recycling committee, our committee, the commission go forward with reducing the number of materials, that could mean a lot of contract changes for JPAs, for individual cities, a recommendation of contract language that might have to be inserted to basically capture real recycling on that. Maybe the other way of saying that is how much residue and what is it the residue that is being landfilled for those cities who may not be as sophisticated as other cities who've already incorporated that into their contracts. So that's part of a transparency issue. And then what I would love to see, and it might be market development, but I've already talked to my city manager about pushing one or two of our 3 markets to putting in reverse vending machines. But where is the discussion for that? It can't handle the complete flow, but it could at least help bridge the gap while other buybacks come back into place. So I would love to see that coming from the recycling committee. I would like specific language that, as a little elected official, and say, implement this, because our planning staff does not have the sophistication or doesn't have the experience, and they're stretched so thin.
Thank you.
With refillables, and my apologies to the refillable companies that are out there. I've said there's only one major processor of recycled glass, but the refillable companies, they are processors, and they can receive material back. They will require a bottle bill fix, because beverage containers pay into the program, but the only way that they could redeem and pay processing payments is if they cancel the container, which means they have to destroy it. And that's the opposite of refilling. So that would have to be through legislation in the bottle bill that allows refillable companies to redeem deposits to bars or restaurants that are in the refillable program and have that material that's not canceled eligible for processing payments. I think the biggest challenge for the refillable group would be providing kind of an audit trail. So the same containers are not being paid over and over again. That could result in fraud. So you could have a refillable company.
Did you see that McConnell said he's against it? And then
Alex, I think do you mean to have your speaker on?
Oh, sorry. I was talking about the people storming the Capitol, which is a bit ridiculous. So,
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I'll turn that on.
Chair Donnelly, I think those are all excellent points. I think the difficulty has been source reduction is sitting out over here with reuse as a subset of source reduction. And in my world, we tried to put source reduction in everything, meaning repair, resale, reuse, is sort of that first lens that you look at. Would it be possible for the recycling committee to go back and use your reuse lens, your refillable lens, even to the point of discussing bottle standardization like they have in Canada?
Okay, that's definitely something we could consider as an agenda item. As far as recommended contract language, if anybody has any contracts that might have it, that could help expedite the process on ensuring that material accepted in programs is recycled to a certain degree, where you don't have a high percentage that is disposed of. So if anybody has any of that contract language, that could help the recycling committee, vet that and possibly recommend it. As far as stores using RVMs, again, that's a bottle bill fix. RVMs are allowed at this point, but the stores that use them are also required to have posted hours, 10 hours per week to receive additional material. So currently, any store that wants to put in an RVM can do that. They just need to be certified and then be open 10 additional hours a week to accept additional material. So they accept all material types through the RVMs.
Just to play devil's advocate, the way my county is looking at COVID recovery is really looking at disadvantaged communities as the main lens, and a lot of the effort. In fact, even the grant that CalRecycle gave for the bottle bill to San Mateo County is looking at 3 what are considered some of our disadvantaged, not totally, but disadvantaged communities. So I'm not sure my Safeway or my Lucky's would want it. It's more if the city of Millbrae chooses to incorporate programs that will assist disadvantaged communities, then we want it done. It's not so much what the supermarket might want, but what do we have in terms of social equity, environmental justice?
Okay. I just want to amend a comment that I've made in the past, and it relates to the Humboldt situation. In the past, I had mentioned that all the stores up in Eureka had received exemptions where they didn't have to take containers back into the store. And that was one of our recommendations, is to only allow a 35% exemption of stores by jurisdiction. But up in Humboldt County on October 20th, the status for all but 2 stores was changed from exempt to unserved. And by changing the status from exempt to unserved, that triggered the requirement for all the stores and the dealers in Humboldt County to start redeeming containers in store. So now Humboldt County has the stores and dealers, and I think there's over 30 of them that are posted on the CalRecycle website that are required to take containers back into the store. So that's why they're all very anxious to get a recycling center up there, because with COVID, the stores don't have a limitation on the hours that material can be taken back in the store. So anytime they're open, they can take it back. But it is bringing material that some or most people would consider could be contaminated at this point. So that's why the stores are panicking up there. So all the stores in Humboldt County, or most of the stores, are now required for in-store take back. But as a part of that, the stores have to take the material that they've received to a recycling center or a processor. So now those stores will have to drive 70 or 90 miles north up to Crescent City or down to Santa Rosa. So that's why we got all those comments from the Humboldt people today.
Thanks. So being still on the recycling committee then, would it be that looking for agenda items for the next meeting? So the Humboldt situation, is that something that you could take up as far as any other recommendations, or?
No, we've already addressed it in the prior recommendations.
Okay.
And some of the comments today. And the Humboldt situation, like Ukiah or any of the underserved areas, legislative fixes will take 24 to 36 months. We're hoping that with Director Wagner on board, there can be some discussions with the governor's office to do something in the budget to provide funding through the budget rather through the bottle bill that requires the regulations to be written over an 18 to 24 month process. So unless there's action through the governor in the budget, any incentives to open up recycling centers in these underserved, disadvantaged areas could take 24 to 36 months.
Is that something, I heard several of us say, you know, how urgent this is. Is there something that the committee could take up as a recommendation? I heard several calls for giving more authority to CalRecycle to be able to be more nimble, to move faster, that maybe the committee could discuss options that we could recommend that are shorter term and any kind of bottle bill fix, because we did have some suggestions in our report But add to that something that they delegate an emergency situation here, some authority to CalRecycle to move a lot faster to get things fixed on a convenience level basis, since this has been a critical problem at a time when people really need their money back for the necessities of life. Are you open to that? Is that for the committee to take up?
I thought that's what I talked to Director Wagner about earlier, is there needs to be discussions between her office, Secretary Blumenfeld's office with the governor. It needs to happen quicker than going through our committee. So
right,
I think
but for now, wouldn't it be good if the commission, because we can also, if something comes back to the next commission meeting from the committee that says we all agree, 17 of us, that X, Y, and Z should happen in the short term to give emergency authority to CalRecycle to address this immediate convenience problem, wouldn't that be helpful and supportive of whatever they can do?
Can we just do that now?
We could. I mean,
because and Secretary Blumenfeld, I think he hit the nail on the head. At least he understood what I was saying. Is the recommendation to give the director of CalRecycle more money and more authority to make changes?
I guess the thing is we weren't planning on doing that today. We've only got a few minutes left. We haven't even gotten to 2 other committees. I think it would be best if this had time, since you have time on the next recycling committee agenda. And maybe I'm alone, but do other commissioners think this is something we should discuss? We've heard repeatedly that the issue is a kind of a crisis. Commissioner Valle, Vice Chair Valle?
I was going to suggest and I'm on the recycling committee. We have not had a lot of discussion on curbside recycling. We've talked about what's in and what's out and what's feasible and what's marketable and what isn't, but we haven't talked about the cost of processing. These are costs that cities are not willing to bear. They're willing to bear the cost of collection but not processing. So there's a whole group of people that are suffering in the industry because we're not covering those costs. In addition to that, we haven't really looked into the significance of glass and what it's doing to contaminate our curbside materials. 3-color mixed glass is a tremendous cost, and it carries a lot of weight. And as Commissioner Don Levy said earlier, there's only one glass recycler in the whole state of California, and we're sort of held hostage by that company. And they're a good company, don't get me wrong. But the other is the cycle of glass and how it goes through the whole system. And we haven't talked about the wine industry, and we've been carrying their water for ages. We haven't talked about the influence of the wine industry on glass and trying to close the loop on that element. So I think there's a lot more that we can do on curbside recycling that we haven't even talked about, including automation and how automation is influencing our industry and jobs in the future. So I think there's a lot more that we can do outside of just AB 2020 and the bottle bill that we haven't talked about yet.
Oh, excellent points. And I guess I'm thinking that I'm just going to throw it out there that the committees all look at doing what is the checklist of things, their top priority things to try to make sure we get into the July report. So again, we know what we're shooting for July, and we can start outlining the report around those major topic areas. So if the committees could do that, and then at the next meeting bring back the list of the big things they plan on dealing with the next 6 months, just like we did the last time, that was very helpful. Except now we've got more process under our belt, and I think it'll be helpful to all of us to know. But curbside recycling is in our name, so I think that really does something we should look at. And I probably got lost at who was speaking, so I'm going to go back and say I probably missed somebody. But let's see, Commissioners Dell, I think, is next. Commissioner Dell.
Right. You asked if it was just you, and you previously actually said plastic or beverage bottles account for 4% of the waste. We have spent many hours, if not 50% of the time, on the recycling committee talking about the bottle bill, not talking about those other things. Commissioner Dunleavy has worked tirelessly to try to bring in external speakers to make recommendations. And the truth is there's a diversity of interests on this commission, and there are real structural problems with the bottle bill. And I say this with an independent view. It is shameful what's happening in Humboldt. We live in an area that is underserved, and it's shameful what's happening, but this really needs to be addressed at a higher level. I question if the commission types up another thing and spends 4 more hours talking about it, whether it will really make a difference, or if the secretary today and the director have gotten the message loud and clear that changes need to be made. And I question that us spending even more time and typing something up will really make a difference when we could be addressing other things in the curbside bin. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Dell, thank you for that. And as far as bottle bill issues today, it's happy to have Secretary Blumenfeld and Director Wagner here. The message was clear. The director needs money and authority to make changes now.
Right, but we didn't put that in a report, and the legislature did not see that from us. So all I'm saying is, if it's a message we want to send, we haven't sent it. We only gave it to 2 people who actually need authority from the legislature.
Well, and I think that the legislature will need some direction from the governor. And if they want it to happen soon, I don't think it needs to be in a report, because I don't want action to wait for a report in July where they could consider it in the next session. As Mindy indicated, somewhere around Valentine's Day, that sets the agenda for the rest of the session. So we have 4 or 5 weeks to help set the agenda for the rest of the session. And hopefully the governor, with his newly appointed director, can find a way to give her the authority and the funding to make some changes to the bottle bill that'll get recycling centers opened in these underfunded or underserved and disadvantaged areas, because that will result in less glass in the curbside programs that'll hopefully help with their contamination issue on other things. It's like I had to apologize to her for putting the pilot programs on blast, but the pilot programs delay real reform in the program. So the governor, Secretary Blumenfeld, and Director Wagner, they need to come up with some plans and some solutions quickly that they'll support, so then the legislature could adopt and approve them, hopefully by May, to get something activated by July 1st.
Okay, so we are titled the Statewide Commission on Recycling Markets and Curbside Recycling. And we just told the 2 leaders of Cal EPA and Cal Recycle that we need something done, and we hope that they get more power and authority to move quicker on this issue of convenience in the bottle bill. But we have not put anything in writing to any of the legislators, and I'm not proposing waiting till July. We've talked about before that there's nothing, that's a minimum. If we choose to make an important statement, we could, as a commission, make a very important statement. That's something we're hearing loud and clear from the people, that there's an immediate crisis on convenience in this program, and it needs to be resolved quickly, much faster than the legislature can move, and that we encourage someone to give authority to Cal Recycle to move quickly so that the people can access their deposit money at a time of crisis. We could do that. And I think that would send a very powerful signal, and it would help them. But that's just me. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Commissioner Davis, I think, is next, and then Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, I guess thinking about process and yeah, we finished our work in December. There are things that might have been done differently. I'm hearing one now. And I would agree with the chair that we don't need to wait till June or July to send things forward. So I do think I really wanted to talk about the role of the committees. And, if the committee's work is finished, done, and all the committee members agree with that, I think the committee should bring that finding to the commission and we can dissolve the committee. If there's still work to be done, I think the work from the committees needs to come forward in a written fashion to the commission, and then we can discuss things. I don't think it would be a good idea to say we couldn't agree on at the committee, so we're going to kick things to the commission. I'm more than willing to take recommendations that have options. If there are 2 or 3 items that a committee couldn't agree on, identify those and what the alternatives might be, and then bring that to the commission. That's at least a report back. But I hope that we don't end up dissolving the committees and then try to do the committee's work at the commission level. I think it would be a disservice.
Commissioner Ward, you're next, and then Commissioner.
Yes, in terms of the report and the outline that we had looked at, one of the things that we don't yet have from the recycling committee is the context description, sort of the setting of the recommendations that are in the final report. And so I'd very much appreciate having someone from the recycling committee taking responsibility and drafting those things and bringing it forward to the commission. Also, in terms of additional work that I could see the recycling committee addressing as being ongoing issues is some more comprehensive discussion of infrastructure development. I mean, while that's partially recycling market development, I think of a lot of the processing, a lot of the getting to the markets discussion is better handled by the recycling committee. And then I also think that it's important to recognize something that several of us mentioned, which is recycling is really kind of the social service of first resort to many people. And there might be opportunity not only for recognizing this, but even perhaps enhancing it, whether we use that as a way to distribute PPE or a mechanism to distribute food that's been rescued. There are ways of enhancing its social service role in a positive way that I think might have potential. And then regarding, since we have concerns about the pilot project, I think as we applied and were rejected, and part of the problem that we saw was the lack of flexibility in terms of how those were structured. I think the whole idea to me of a pilot project is try something new that you couldn't try before. Well, when you've got all these restrictions, if you have to do it the same way it's always been done, yeah, you can only be in a convenience zone, well, you get the same thing. So I think those are all potential things that the recycling committee could work on if you'd like to, but at a minimum, I think you have to have somebody setting the context for the report. I don't think it's appropriate for us to write that on your behalf.
Commissioner Sky?
Okay.
Thank you. I won't repeat, but I definitely agree with both Commissioners Davis and Ward. And in building on that comment, I'd like to see, there's an interest in having the final report, expanding on the sections that we didn't get to and having more of the commissioners working on it. And so the committees can help to write those sections that are most relevant to their work. And that's a great way to distribute the work and get more voices included. And just, not to take up more time at this meeting, but we should have an agenda item to talk about what's happening with the bottle bill. And I'd like to see the recycling committee draft something that we can agree on through consensus at our next meeting and send to the legislature, because it is a pressing issue and we're hearing throughout the state, but it's certainly in Humboldt, how big of an impact it's having.
So having an agenda item to talk about what in the bottle bill?
The need for immediate action. And I think the chair said it pretty well, but I think a team should be working on the actual wording of what we're asking the legislature to do, what we'd want them to do to focus on immediately to fix the bottle bill, and then send that as a formal statement rather than, I think it's great that we have the Secretary of Cal EPA and the Director of Cal Recycle coming to our meeting, but it should be something that's shared with the entire legislature and sent formally in a written document.
I mean, we could add that context, but I think the status of the bottle bill would just follow up on all the work that Container Recycling Institute, Eunomia, Consumer Watchdog have already done, talking about the issues with the bottle bill, that we've gone from 2,500 redemption centers down to 1,221 as of yesterday. We could chime in on the underserved areas where there's only 12 recycling centers in the Bay Area for 4.8 million people, that there's 3 recycling centers in the northwest section of California where they have to drive 90 miles. I mean, I think they know that. We can put it in a report, but the report's going to get to them in July. As Mindy indicated, the legislative session is going to be set by February 14th, around Valentine's Day, a nice little surprise for everybody. So our report in July isn't going to impact what they do this session.
Jeff, I think the last 3 speakers, I think, said the same thing, and I think maybe we're not getting this across. We don't have to wait till July. We could, if the commission thought this was urgent and something important, we could do a memo to the legislature, an urgent memo. We could agree, if the commission wanted to write a letter to the editor from the whole commission about the urgency that this agency needs to get some authority to move faster and do something to address these problems, which would address what Secretary Blumenfeld suggested, is that we use our voice. I mean, I'm open to ideas. It just feels like, as a commission, we've been given a platform and we could really use it for a lot of good, and we don't have to wait for a deadline to speak. And we could think about what creative ways we could use our skill sets and our opportunity here to help get the authority to CalRecycle to move, because this has been a chronic problem and it's just turning into a pretty big disaster, quite frankly, with the lack of convenience at this point. And I can see a couple of hands up. Commissioner Schneider and then Commissioner Osagura.
Chair Sanborn, is it within our ability to draft a letter to the League of California Cities and to the county entity and let local government officials know? So it gets to every elected official. I will tell you, most of them do not know that this is really an issue. You know, with everything else you're doing, you become such a generalist as a local elected official. If we could do that, I mean, I'm working with League of California Cities, perhaps Supervisor Valle is working at the county level, but we could start doing that too. If every city said, wow, I have residents that are going hungry that could be redeeming their containers and putting food on the table, that might encourage this to move a heck of a lot faster. And I'd love to see that letter come out ASAP. It would help me when I'm reaching out to my fellow county people.
Yeah, I believe in the updated legislation by now Senator Eggman, we were given authority to give our report and our suggestions to not just CalRecycle and Cal EPA, but to the legislature and to federal agencies and to others. And so I think we're on safe ground if we decide we want to write an urgent comment recommendation letter to the legislature and the governor and send it far and wide, send it to the press. Like, we have a problem. There are hungry people that can't eat that would help us meet our recycling rates, but they can't find a place to return the bottles and cans.
And again, I'm going to emphasize, do not assume that your city council or your board of soups understand the issues and include them.
We can send it to all of them. CSAC, the League, RCRC, that's what I mean. I think we got authority to send it to everybody. I don't think there's anything, we could double check with CalRecycle, but the way I read it, it seemed pretty open, that there was nothing off limits as far as who we communicate our recommendations to.
Well, I guess I'm enough of a politician that I would prefer to have it from you guys first before I read about it from the local reporter.
Oh, no, we could send it directly. We could assign commissioners to reach out to certain groups and make that warm handoff of that information prior to it going to the press. That could be part of our strategy of information sharing. I think Commissioner Osagura, I think you were next.
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair Sanborn, and if I misinterpreted, please correct me, but I guess answering two parts to a question I think you posed. Number one is the continued work of the commission, and I do believe that we submitted a document to the assembly, right, in terms of our recommendations. We also talked at the end of the session that we would continue the work in terms of what we had submitted as recommendations for any need for additions, revisions, as things move forward. So I think it's extremely important that the work of the commission continues. So I believe that is, I'm answering, I guess, part of your initial question. Do I think that it's still important to take a look at? Yes. I mean, we're reviewing a pretty robust document. I've received comments regarding this document that say, hey, wow, what a tremendous amount of work in such a short period of time, right? But because of that, there's probably still a need for reviewing, taking a look, and revising if needed. The second point is, as Secretary Blumenfeld said, and I think as Commissioner Schneider mentioned, I mean, if there's urgencies for certain topics, could we provide a letter? Of course, right? Should we? I mean, we will discuss it, and then, as we've done as a commission before, make a determination. Do we go and talk to groups? I mean, we'll be provided guidance to do so. So I think that it's a living document that we're working on. But also, can we provide additional information to the assembly, to the governor's office, and to stakeholders? The answer would be yes. And so I think that it works all the way till it's finalized, right? I mean, and so anyway, I think I did answer the question that you were posing in terms of my perspective. Thank you.
You're on the recycling committee, I believe, as well. So would you be open to having this discussion at the recycling committee with specific words and maybe some sort of a way to communicate via a memo or an urgency recommendation, what have you?
Yes. I mean, and what those emergency items are that we should highlight. We presented our recommendation, but there's a significant urgency here, and we encourage you to address these in a more urgent manner. Yes, definitely. I mean, we should take a look at that and review it and develop it.
Would that be something that Commissioner Dunleavy, you guys could take up at the meeting on the 22nd?
Okay, so let me see if I understand the process. The recycling committee would have a discussion on the 22nd of draft language. Then we'd have to schedule a second meeting to approve it. So then we can send it to the commission level potentially by February 17th or March 3rd for a first reading at a commission level before it could go to a second reading in March to approve.
I understand the committee doesn't need to hear it twice, the commission does.
Okay, so then we would hear it on the 22nd and bring it to the commission for a first reading on February 3rd, and then it could be finalized on February 17th to be submitted after the legislative calendar is kind of closed, after Valentine's Day. So
that would be correct unless we change our process for urgency items, because we haven't discussed urgency items and we didn't put that in the charter.
Yeah. So if we take it to the recycling committee on the 22nd, it won't come back to the commission until February 3rd. So the soonest the letter could go out would be February 4th, a week before the end of that calendar period that Mindy was talking about.
Since we're discussing this in concept at the full commission, couldn't this count as the first hearing? I mean, what I'm hearing is that essentially it's a quick recommendation to take the excess revenues associated with the unredeemed deposits and give the CalRecycle director discretion to use those funds to the support of recycling infrastructure. I think we are hearing that now, and you could then craft that into the recycling committee, bring it forth, and we could adopt it as the full commission, having heard it twice.
The thing I would suggest is Chair Sanborn and I work on a draft letter to present to the commission for approval on the 20th, on January 20th.
Do that too. because then but I guess I would just, the recycling committee, it seems like there's a lot of good people on the recycling committee that might be better suited for this, well, because I'm trying to do so many other things, if that would be okay, if there's somebody else on the recycling committee that could work with you on that.
But for the urgency, I think if we bring it to the commission on the 20th, we can get the letter out. If we go to the recycling committee on the 22nd, it doesn't come to the commission until February 3rd.
A good point. Let's look at doing that. Let's see, because
I just think, Chair Sandberg, we have to be careful as a body of 17 people that it doesn't turn into individuals from the commission writing letters continuously. Because what's going to happen is we're going to get a lot of commentary from outside folks saying, was this discussed, debated, did you get everyone's input? I would be concerned with that. My recommendation is if there is a letter to be developed, it's developing a draft letter, making sure that we can discuss it at a forum and redline it like we've done before to minimize any of that type of comments that we've already had. Don't want to go back to that situation.
So we have to have at least, I mean, unless we change the rules, it has to be at the full commission twice. We have no language in front of us today. We have a concept we've been discussing that was under the rubric of the committee work. So nobody has anything to look at in the public. And the next recycling meeting is after our next commission meeting. So the fastest way to do this, sorry, Commissioner, I see Commissioner Davis also, did you want to speak next? And then Commissioner Sky?
Just a couple of points. If I could just briefly mention, one is that even beyond the deadline for introducing legislation, there's legislation that's amended all the time. There'll be a number of bills related to this topic. So I don't see that as like a critical deadline for us to get this in. The other is that I know that we had a policy for 2 readings for policy recommendations, but I didn't think that every document or work product needed to follow that same procedure, as long as we agendize it. And my concern is we're having a lot of discussion now about this topic and it wasn't on the agenda. So that's what I was recommending. Something be developed, whether it's at the committee level or some other process, and be brought back, placed on the agenda so that the public knows this is something we plan to act on, and then vote on it and send it out. I don't think it needs 2 readings.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't do 2 readings of every word of the report, but every policy was 2 readings. Commissioner Davis?
Oh, just would point out that there's still time to agendize either a special committee meeting or subcommittee prior to the next, there's barely time prior to the next.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the same thing.
It's possible, yeah. And I think it's appropriate, even if you can't achieve a quorum, you could still introduce the topic, discuss it, and then let it come forward on the 20th. So just a suggestion that might be a workaround. It is tight, and there's a holiday in there on the Monday, so it's even worse.
Yep. If we decided to today, you could have an emergency meeting of and do 10-day notice for the 19th to just do a 1-ticket item of taking up this issue of the urgency of the bottle bill situation and lack of convenience. Commissioner Dunleavy?
With this group, how much additional language do we need to put in the letter than a statement that redemption is not convenient throughout the state, must be addressed immediately, requesting the governor and the legislature to authorize funds and authority to the director of CalRecycle to assist in the opening of redemption centers in underserved, disadvantaged areas effective July 1st. In using funds from the bottle bill and from the general fund, which receives the $100 million a year in sales tax revenue. What additional language would people suggest that we add to it? I don't think it needs to be a long letter.
I agree, and I think it's redemption opportunities because it could be reverse vending machines as well as centers, because honestly, those can be rolled out pretty darn quickly.
Yeah, or bag drop.
Yeah, or bag drop.
So what additional language would commissioners like added to the letter? Because the less is more principle
I agree with that
applies
general
to this.
outline. I think you hit it. I think the question is, for process, to make sure we don't go around our process, is do we want to schedule an emergency meeting? Maybe it's of the whole commission just for an hour to go over a proposed letter on the 19th so that we can hear it twice, the 19th and then the 20th. And it's just about that, so that we're very, and everybody can, and we can tell all our networks to please, you know, be aware and weigh in. And there are public comments, and we're running out of time. It's 12:15, 16. So let me turn it real quick to CalRecycle. Are these comments related to this item?
The comment is titled Humboldt County Needs Help Now.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've heard that one. So I'm going to, is there another comment?
Let me refresh real quick.
Actually, thank you because that's why we're discussing this now. So thank you all for your comments.
No new comments besides that one.
Yeah. So we heard the urgency. Would the commission, I'm looking for thumbs up or thumbs down. Would you be okay if we set a meeting, an urgency meeting at CalRecycle? Could you do it if we scheduled a meeting on the 19th for like an hour to take up nothing except this letter that could be written by Commissioner Donlevy and I or somebody else, and then brought and vetted in a public forum? And then, is this worth our time? Is this something we can do? First of all, is it something we could do to CalRecycle? That's 10-day notice, I believe. And they're probably conferring on that. To commissioners, is this something that you think we should do? Commissioner Davis, your hand's up.
Okay. Again, I thought it might be more expeditious to have a smaller group, the recycling committee, who's been talking about this, who's been researching this, draft the letter and bring it forward. It may very well be what Commissioner Dunleavy just stated, but you've got a group that's been focused on it, and it just seems easier to have that smaller group convene and then bring the recommendation the next day to the committee, rather than bring the whole commission together to talk about work that's really in the expertise of the recycling committee.
But no, well, I think there's two things. If we have two people, a two-person subcommittee, work on the letter, but it has to be in front of the commission twice, the way we've written it. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but I think, as Commissioner Segura said, it's going to be, could be challenged. That people didn't know about it. We didn't give enough thought, enough time. So if we don't do the full commission 2 days, I don't know. I think we put ourselves a little bit out on the edge.
I think getting the letter drafted, put it on Google Drive, you know, with a date certain, if you want to have people have a chance to see it. I think the problem is if at 8:15 on the morning of our meeting, the letter is posted on Google Drive, that, you know, that's not very constructive notice. But if the letter can be drafted a couple days,
I'll make a proposal. I think the way to deal with this is to have Commissioner Donlevy, who basically just did a great outline, I think, of this letter, and we can call it an urgency recommendation letter, and we get it on the next agenda for the 20th of the full commission. It could be discussed also again at the recycling committee on the 22nd, and then our final would be February 3rd. People know we're doing it, and anybody can talk to anybody about it. It's all public. And then we can send it on the 4th. And then we've met our process of 2 commission meetings. We don't have to add a meeting. And it can be discussed at length more at the recycling committee meeting on the 22nd. Is that a thumbs up? Is everybody good with that? Peace? Good.
Can we move the recycling committee meeting to the 18th or 19th? So we can vet it and get this letter out to you on the 20th, and then we can do the second reading on the 3rd. Does that work for anybody? Jeff?
Does CalRecycle, can they do that? Because I know that they plan these meetings, and they might be questioning whether they can do the public support of a public meeting on that notice. Can I hear from CalRecycle? Is anybody available?
The soonest we could move the meeting would be to the 22nd or the 20th, because we have a 10-day agenda requirement to have it posted publicly, and we haven't posted the agenda yet. So we have to have 10 days. So the soonest would be the 20th,
You're right.
but the
You're right.
commission is already set to meet.
With the holiday, yeah. I see.
And that's why I say we present a draft to the commission on the 20th.
Okay, well, that's fine with me. Is that okay with everybody then? So it's Commissioner Donlevy. Is there anybody else who'd rather do it with Commissioner Donlevy? Because that would be fine with me. Okay. Well, then I'm happy to do it with you. Yeah, all kinds of hands going up there. So I'll go ahead and do it with you, Commissioner Donlevy. We'll get it, and we'll post it as soon as we can so everybody can see it on the Google document. And then we'll hear it at the commission meeting on the 20th. And we'll leave some real time for that discussion. By the way, we've got to get to our next agenda item, which is about agendas, which we've got Kip Lipper has agreed to come to our next meeting as well. And then, so that would be the first time we'd hear it. And then the second time would be the 3rd. If we finish that letter, we'd do a second reading on the 3rd. Or you can take it up again, and you probably should, on the 22nd at the recycling committee, in addition, to see if there's any other comments before it comes back to the
Perfect
commission.
timing to review a draft letter on the 20th when Mr. Lipper is at the commission meeting, because
Good point.
he's the senior and one of the most knowledgeable people on the bill. I think he wrote
That's
it.
perfect. Yep. Awesome. Well, maybe we should put that up. Yeah, we'll put that right after him and make sure he knows about it. Can ask some
Or ask
questions.
him if he wants to sit before.
Okay, well, we've got 8 minutes. We're going to have to cut it. As you know, we have to have public notice to go beyond, and we don't. So if everybody's okay with that, thumbs up. That's how we'll do it. So Jeff and I will go ahead and draft it, and we'll get on the agenda for the next meeting. And we'll go from there, and then you'll take it up at Recycling Committee, and then February 3rd. Great. We didn't even get to labeling or organics yet, so I'm going to go real quick to Commissioner Dell about the Labeling and Public Education Committee. So could you?
Right. So in a nutshell, we have made great progress in meeting what was required by the law. I believe in simplistic terms, we are trying to help the people of California how to recycle more, compost more of the good stuff, and keep the bad stuff out of the recycling and composting bins. And we made good progress in doing that through creating a draft framework, which is at the commission level and is something that should be put on the agenda for further discussion at the commission level around an overall framework. And then we worked with the recycling committee to identify the top contaminants that are clogging recycle bins, and those being plastic bags and films. And we passed the policy recommendation to take the recycle symbol off so people are not confused. And we have been working and collaborating with CalRecycle, OPA, and their whole program around, their new program around education. And we are trying to schedule the next meeting later in January. We have a poll out to do that. And as I brought up to you, Commissioner Sanborn, at the next commission meeting, we requested 20 minutes for OPA, California CalRecycle's OPA, to present the survey that they're doing for California, and then also to the commission on recycling perhaps composting issues. So I believe we have a half an hour on the agenda for the next commission meeting for OPA to present that so that everyone on the commission can have input.
Okay, so I'm happy to put on, if the commission agrees, we definitely want to hear that public education. So it's a general presentation on where they are with that big project, and then we can all give feedback. And this
specifically around a survey that they're doing, specifically on a survey.
And is this so the committee already heard it?
We already heard all of their plans around how the whole program will work and then how the survey fits in. And we made the request to them, oh, can the commission be part of the survey? And they said they would go back and look at it, and they said yes. And now that survey to the commission is what the whole commission will be hearing about at the next meeting.
Okay, can you write me up the agenda item name? We're going to go into the meeting right after this meeting at 12:30 to actually set the agenda. So if you could just email me the agenda heading, that would be very helpful, and like a sentence explaining what that item is. And we'll get that on. And I think we were going to try and get you 30 minutes to make sure we had time. And is there another meeting? I think the committee hasn't met since like October. Is there another schedule of this meeting and a list of things that the committee will be doing, or is it considered wrapped up, or where are we with that?
I think the main crux is still at the commission level to decide when the time is right and we can work it into the commission schedule, is to revisit this overall system of recycle right, compost correctly, labeling things and doing things. But that's at a commission level. It needs all 19 inputs into that. So that's there. We did the contamination level, the labeling. We really haven't talked with the composting committee. That's one thing we could reach out to about, is there something that we could specifically do to help keep the bad things out of composting? And then after that, the committee the last time did discuss things to bring up this year. In addition, I mean, I think we've hit most of the requirements of the law, but additional things we talked in general, and I think that's something in this next committee meeting we'll bring back up and have a whole discussion of what more would we like to accomplish in the next 6 months with this committee.
You are going to schedule another committee meeting?
Yeah, we've got a poll out right now to try to get it scheduled.
Okay, great, because I know that one of the items we put on hold for policies was the labeling system for products and post-consumer management, right? And we were going to bring that up as a priority this part of the year. So that item, that's the one that you and Kobe put together, right?
Yeah, and that should go on the full commission agenda. Again, that's at the commission level to keep discussing. So when the right time, when the real hot priorities of a bottle bill and getting Humboldt their nickels back, after we get to that, then we could schedule some good solid time to go through the last proposal, policy proposal that Kobe explained in the last meeting. That would be great at the commission level.
Commissioner Davis? We've got 2 minutes, by the way, so it'll be very brief.
Yeah, just, well, real quickly, I hope that the committee would have a chance to look at that proposal. We never saw it in written form, and we never recommended it to the commission. It was my understanding, it was going to go back on the committee meeting. We've had 3 different polls to schedule that meeting. I brought it up in October that the committee had not approved or made that recommendation. So I think it's important that the committee get a chance to look at the recommendation and provide input.
Yeah, that would be the process that we had. So probably getting another labeling committee scheduled and then bringing this item up again and making sure everybody's had time and it comes from the full committee would be great. Unless I misunderstood something. Okay.
Well, actually, I mean, it did come forward in a PowerPoint format, and we presented options because we couldn't get to agreement at the committee level. And I think actually, as Commissioner Davis said earlier, when you can't get to agreement, you bring the options forward, and that is what we did.
Well, it's almost
we never had a written.
I'm going to suggest that this should go back to committee as a written format for discussion to see if we can get consensus, because I don't know how we're going to get consensus at the commission level if we can't get the committee to agree. And so give it another shot. And I'm sure we can do great because we did already. So it's 12:30. We're going to have to wrap it up. I'll just say the next agenda then, we're going to have, I'm going to propose that we discuss how long these meetings go. I'm going to try and keep them a little bit shorter at 3 hours. If we go over, they're scheduled for 4, but I'm thinking we can try to keep these to 3 from now on if everybody's good with that, because it's, and that way we can end at 11:30. Okay, good. So that'll make it more palatable. And then we're going to have Mr. Lipper join us. We're going to talk about the OP, what we just discussed about the Office of Public Affairs presentation. We're going to discuss the committee reports again, and I think that's the basic stuff that we were going to do for the next time. So I guess I'll just say thank you all very much. Great meeting. And is there any public comment? Because we're already over. I think we have to end the meeting, correct? Yeah. So I think we're already done. All right. Thanks, you guys. We'll see you in a couple weeks.